7.
I'm John Dickerson. Join me for the Daily Report, weekdays on CBS News 24/7.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going.
The clock, it's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Major Garrett in Milwaukee. Welcome to a special Republican National Convention edition of America Decides. It has already been an enormously news-heavy day on this very first day of the Republican National Convention. So much news, I've got to consult my notepad here, so bear with me as I do it. First of all, former President Trump nominated a historic third time by the Republican Party as its presidential nominee. The first time ever in the history of the Republican Party that has happened in 3 consecutive presidential cycles. Also, very noteworthy, former President Trump has named his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, the first millennial ever to appear on a major party ticket. Thirdly, as I keep track of my notes, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was granted a long-standing request for Secret Service protection that came through today, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. expressed thanks for that decision. Adjacent to that news, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and former President Trump here in Milwaukee this morning had a brief and cordial meeting. Nothing really substantive. They just talked, they said, about issues related to national unity. Finally, this morning, breaking news out of Florida, where federal district judge Eileen Cannon dismissed entirely the case brought against former President Trump for alleged mishandling of classified documents and obstruction of justice. Judge Cannon did not do that on the merits of the case, but did that rather in deference to a legal technicality, ruling that the appointment of special counsel Jack Smith exceeded the authority possessed by the Department of Justice. Technicality or not, that case, for all intents and purposes, is off the books. It may be refiled, but for now, there are those in this arena, Fiserv Forum at the Republican National Convention, who will consider it more than a small token of vindication, at least legally speaking, for former President Trump. I want to bring in CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns, who joins me here as we overlook the floor of the Republican National Convention as the music plays. Caitlin, it's been a very heavy news day. Your impressions of day one?
Well, there's no doubt that the Trump campaign and everyone here is taking what you just described, that decision in Florida, as a big win. I can also say, just having been on the ground here since Thursday in preparation for this meeting, there has been a real sense of messaging about Republican unity, especially in contrast with the Democrats right now. And I think you can describe the atmosphere here today as kind of a completion of a long cycle of Republicans trying to figure out who they are and who they want to be for. A lot of Republicans I've been talking to are very excited about Donald Trump, and it's kind of the completion of his takeover of the Republican Party. I think that's more pronounced with the pick of J.D. Vance as his running mate.
And why do you say that, Caitlin? More pronounced.
J.D. Vance is considered someone early on, even when he was disagreeing with Trump, was able to speak the language of Trump supporters. Remember when he released Hillbilly Elegy, he was kind of seen as the translator for Trump, even though at the time he wasn't supporting him. He has a long record, as we've discussed, of very negative criticisms of the former president. But he also presents some kind of, generational change, but also someone who is carrying the mantle of MAGA, so to speak, and kind of representing the new generation of Trump-style politics. But he can also have a broader appeal because he has kind of a Ivy League pedigree and ties to Silicon Valley, big fundraisers. So kind of weighting those two camps, especially as the Biden campaign has called the Midwest their clearest path to success.
Picking up on that point, Caitlin, for J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, and Donald Trump Jr., very significant figures. Peter Thiel, founder of PayPal, one of the original outside investors in Facebook. Planeteer is his other company, very deeply wedded to not all of the tech world, but certain parts of it. That's entree for President Trump that he might not have, that is wider, possibly with J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump Jr., a staunch advocate for J.D. Vance in this conversation leading up to this announcement today.
Absolutely. The two are very, very close. They talk a lot. They're very close friends. And what's been interesting, as you know from covering Trump for so long, that kind of tech Silicon Valley tribe was a little bit elusive at times. That kind of money is really big, and J.D. Vance was instrumental in connections to the Silicon Valley community. David Sachs, who is going to be speaking here later tonight, hosted a big fundraiser for Donald Trump, brought in $20 million, I believe, and has kind of brought that kind of support in firmly into the Trump camp.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so very much. I want to go now to CBS News Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa. A news-filled day. Robert Costa, the kind we love, covering politics. Your thoughts?
Just another quiet day here in Milwaukee, Major. What a day for Republicans, because they were so rattled over the weekend by the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. And now they saw this cascade of events, as you detailed in your notebook opening up this show today, where they saw the classified documents case dismissed, though it could, of course, still be appealed, likely to be appealed. They see J.D. Vance, the Ohio senator, named, and they see Trump secure the nomination. They also see President Biden speaking out against the ticket, saying that J.D. Vance is a clone of former President Trump on the issues. But what I noticed as I was roaming that convention floor just an hour ago, talking to delegates, talking to Trump allies, is that this is a party that really is 8 years on, 9 years on from Trump's emergence on the political scene, fully in his image, and a running mate who's not trying to make an overture to traditional Republicans, but someone who's underscoring on every issue what Trump believes.
And Robert, to that point, how would you evaluate the transformation of J.D. Vance from being so skeptical of Trump in 2016 that he didn't even vote for him to now a full-on advocate and now a running mate?
It's very rare in American politics to see someone who's in their 30s rise in such a rapid way to a national position, to be a running mate. It reminds me, frankly, of how then Senator Richard Nixon landed on the Republican ticket in 1952 with Dwight Eisenhower. To come really out of nowhere in the House, became famous through his investigations of communism, ultimately lands on the ticket with Eisenhower. A lot of people back in 52, history tells us, were really surprised. Eisenhower, this famous general, is picking Richard Nixon. He's so young. There's some of that reaction today inside the GOP. Some of my sources go, he's 39 years old, a huge age gap with the nominee. But they also understand that Trump is looking to the future, wants someone to carry on his ideological movement, the way he's transformed the party, doesn't want it perhaps to disappear. And to build on Caitlin's excellent reporting, this really is a signal that Trump believes Donald Trump Jr., Tucker Carlson, other family members and allies who want to see Trumpism become a generational force in the Republican Party, not just some spasm that happened early this century.
And Robert, I'm so glad you brought up that history of Richard Nixon, because that key element of being young comparatively, Richard Nixon was, explained at least in part his longevity in the Republican Party. We talked at the opening of this show about Donald Trump being the first Republican ever to win the nomination in 3 consecutive cycles. The only one who comes close is Richard Nixon, claiming the nomination in 1960, 68, and 72. But when you start the process when you're so young, your longevity can affect the future of the party for quite a long time. And J.D. Vance is now at the precipice of that kind of open-ended possible influence of the Republican Party, not just now, but for years and years to come. True?
That is exactly right. And it's so rare for a political figure to emerge from a literary sensation like Hillbilly Elegy to then move to elected office. Usually you become a literary bestseller after you've won a Senate seat, a governor's race, or a House race. J.D. Vance comes out of an older tradition in this country and abroad in Britain of people who start as columnists. Think about Boris Johnson, the former British Prime Minister, made his name as a writer, as a commentator. David Cameron was a marketing executive. Now you see in J.D. Vance in the United States someone who was writing columns before he wrote Hillbilly Elegy, was building his name as someone who had a conservative voice, came from a working area of this country. But it also should be noted that Trump is someone I've covered for a long time, and he really cares about credentials. He cares about how people, where they went to school, the Ivy League. He sees in J.D. Vance someone who served his country in uniform, but also has these credentials that really appeal to him as a person.
Ivy League, Yale Law School for J.D. Vance. I want to go now. Robert Costa, thank you so very much. I want to go now to our senior White House and political correspondent, Ed O'Keefe. Nope. So we're going to go to break. Donald Trump has finally announced his running mate here at the Republican National Convention. More on the former president's decision to add Ohio Senator J.D. Vance to the ticket. You are streaming America Decides.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
The chair announces that President Donald J. Trump, having received a majority of the votes entitled to be cast at the convention, has been selected as the Republican Party nominee for President of the United States.
Let history record. That was the moment. House Speaker Mike Johnson announced that Donald Trump was chosen as the Republican Party's nominee for a 3rd time in a row, 3rd consecutive time. That is historic. The former president, as you have probably heard, also selected 39-year-old Ohio Senator J.D. Vance to join him as his running mate. CBS News political director Finn Gomez joins me now. Finn, great to see you. We are now in session 2 of the first day and the first night of the Republican National Convention. They break these things up. Part of the business they had to take care of this afternoon was the official confirmation of Donald Trump as the nominee of the Republican Party. And then the exciting news, J.D. Vance, give me your thoughts on the afternoon as it leads into this evening.
I think that we were, there was a high probability. I think that J.D. Vance was going to be the VP pick, and we did see that happen. Interestingly enough, Major, I just spoke to Governor Mike DeWine, who's the governor of Ohio,
yes,
of course, and who accompanied J.D. Vance when he made his floor run just a little while ago.
Big bear hug.
Big bear hug. He was holding him, and I asked him straight up, like, what do you think? How will this impact the race? And he said, listen, I think that he thinks that he can have an impact on those Rust Belts that we talked about earlier, those states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and of course here Wisconsin, where they feel there's that blue-collar, working-class base voter that they feel they can pull into the Republican column and help them win.
Or at least have a productive conversation with.
He also said that because of his bio, his life story, the fact that he had family members who dealt with addiction and substance abuse, something that with the opioid epidemic, that's something that they think he can relate with a lot of people. That story can relate with a lot of people, which I thought was interesting. I also asked the Major, I was like, who are you going to replace him with? He's like, I don't know yet, is what he said. Because, of course, the governor
does appoint, and but that all has to play out in the course of this election. Probably a little premature, but always a good reporter.
Right.
Pressing on what happens next. Finn, very quickly, tonight, this is a focus on the economy.
Yes.
About 30 seconds. Let me get your thoughts on that.
Big quick. They're going to be focused on Trump's economic policies and how they feel they feel that in contrast to the President Biden's policies, that this will sort of revert back to some of their base understanding of the economy, right? Like that they will put more money in your pocket, and you see the signs that are already handing people out here in the stands that says "Make America Wealthy Again," which of course very Trumpian, but also the big message of this night.
Emphasis on inflation tonight. And guess what, America? Nobody likes inflation. And if you're an incumbent running in an inflationary environment, it's tough. I want to go now to the floor of the convention, the senior White House and political correspondent, Ed O'Keefe. Ed, I hope you can hear me. The band is playing with gusto. Tell me your thoughts and what you're hearing and seeing on the floor.
If anyone needs a house band in the Milwaukee area, these guys are probably available after this week. Major, as you were talking about with Finn, there's a focus tonight on the economy here down on the floor, and in the speeches we'll hear, this is the kind of sign they're giving out ahead of those speeches: Trump America first, Biden America last. One other thing we're going to do throughout the week, Major, we're looking for the good headwear. The good folks of West Virginia are wearing these. Friends of Cole, Patrick Morrissey, who's running for governor. He was here earlier. All right, that's an early entrant. Look at this. You can see they're wearing them over here. Everyone wave, say hello. All right? So, we were talking to a delegate from Nebraska a little while ago, and she said, I'm exhausted already. That was a lot for this afternoon. And as you've been talking about with Bob and Caitlin and Finn, it was. They've got themselves a vice presidential nominee. They got all that other news you were talking about at the top. After it was announced that J.D. Vance would be the running mate, and as Donald Trump was put over the top by the convention officially as the nominee, we bumped into Donald Trump Jr., who we know has played a big role in convincing his father to pick the Ohio senator, and asked him what it is about the 39-year-old senator from the Buckeye State that he thinks is the perfect fit for his father. Take a listen. Explain to those watching why you think J.D. Vance is the best man to run with your father.
Listen, I think he's lived the epitome of the American dream story. I think he's the guy that's capable of bringing that same success that he was able to have, coming from nothing, coming from Appalachia, and succeeding at a level that no one could possibly fathom. If you've read Hillbilly Elegy, I think it's one of the great books. I read it back when it first came out, before he was even sort of on board with Trump or believed that Trump could be the guy that can do that. He's just been an incredible fighter ever since he saw that it was real.
As an interesting point he made, Major, about being a 37-year-old who built Trump Tower, that young people can be successful. Obviously, a play for younger voters disaffected by this election cycle so far, concerned that the two oldest men to ever run are facing off. And Over the course of the night, there'll be all sorts of speeches from regular Americans who have been affected, they believe, by the economic policy of the Biden administration. The speech I'm looking forward to, though, because it'll give us some sense of where things may be headed with a certain subset of voters, the head of the Teamsters Union asked for and was granted an opportunity to speak tonight, and he will speak later this evening. Major.
Ed O'Keefe on the floor of the convention. Thank you very, very much. Well, the majority of the Republican Party is united, and here at this week's Republican National Convention, some conservatives and Republicans, well, they're avoiding it. One of them is former Maryland Governor and now Senate candidate Larry Hogan. Here was some of our conversation earlier. Governor, it's great to see you. You're in our Washington, D.C. bureau. My first question is, why aren't you here in Milwaukee?
Well, there aren't a whole lot of undecided Maryland voters out there in Milwaukee, and, you know, that's what we're really focused on, is trying to win votes here in Maryland.
And to that effect, Governor Hogan, helpful or not helpful to have former President Trump's endorsement?
Well, it wasn't that helpful for me. You know, President Trump lost Maryland by 33 points, so, you know, I ran 46 points ahead of him. It was not something we asked for. But, you know, that's really not impact. I'm out there talking to Maryland voters. It doesn't have much impact at all.
How about this weekend, the events of this weekend? You have, for weeks throughout your candidacy, been talking about the necessity in this country to bring the partisan temperatures down. I imagine you feel that even more profoundly as a result of the events this weekend.
Well, Major, this is something that I've actually been talking about for many, many years. And, you know, I've been talking about it everywhere I could to anyone who would listen. The events that just took place with the attempted assassination of the former president kind of brings to a head all of that concern about the kind of angry, toxic politics, the divisive rhetoric, and about how important it is to lower the temperature. And I'm glad to hear that now both President Biden in his Oval Office address, and I understand President Trump is going to change his remarks to try to talk about some of these concerns that I've been espousing for a long time. I actually literally have been, you know, focused on this as my primary passion for several years now.
Governor Hogan, as a Republican seeking a Senate seat in the state of Maryland, how do you react to the inclusion of Ohio Republican Senator J.D. Vance on President Trump's ticket? He is regarded as someone who not only speaks the MAGA language, but does so with an aggression that former President Trump likes. Are you comfortable with that pick?
Well, I don't know J.D. Vance. We've never met. I think the two of us have pretty different views of the world. I certainly thank him for his military service. And look, I think we were just talking about the need for people to, you know, do away with the divisive rhetoric and to lower the temperature. I think that goes for President Biden, President Trump, and certainly J.D. Vance. I think we got to, instead of just mentioning one time, we're going to start lowering the temperature, and we're going to talk about trying to use less angry and less divisive rhetoric. I think that's what we've got to see continuing throughout the rest of this campaign.
Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, current Republican candidate for the United States Senate. We thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Former President Trump's decision to name J.D. Vance of Ohio to his ticket, well, that came down to the wire. There was genuine suspense. We'll discuss the former president's picks next with our political panel. You are streaming America Decides.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team. Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Residents, please evacuate.
acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case. It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides and our coverage, continuing coverage of the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. Less than 2 years ago, J.D. Vance was a best-selling author, among other things, and he was in a neck-and-neck race to serve Ohio in the United States Senate. Today, he became former President Trump's running mate. I want to bring in our political panel to discuss this and other news of the day, and there was quite a bit. Aaron Perrine and Chuck Rocha. Aaron is a Republican strategist who was the communications director for Trump's 2020 campaign. Chuck is a Democratic strategist, senior advisor, not so long ago, 2020, for Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. Aaron, I want to start with you. The impact of J.D. Vance on the ticket. How do you see that?
I don't know that it's going to make a huge difference overall for the ticket, but I think it's a smart choice for Donald Trump on a number of fronts. One, I believe that Biden has been hemorrhaging young voters, and J.D. Vance does a good job of trying to be able to bring some of those in for the party. Two, J.D. Vance is a senator, so sending him up to have negotiations on the Hill as the president of the Senate, should they be elected, he's already got those relationships. That's super helpful. And three, his really working class background, being able to tell that story in states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that's going to be helpful for the ticket. People vote the top of the ticket, but having a good number 2 is a great support for a candidate like Donald Trump.
Chuck Rocha, you heard President Biden say today that J.D. Vance is, in his words, a clone of former President Trump. Your reaction?
Well, I think that it tells you a lot. For those of us who've been covering politics and me running campaigns, it tells me they're really looking at 3 states, which is Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. It also tells me they're not banking on their VP pick helping them get more African-American votes, but instead having a real story to tell to white, non-college educated, blue-collar workers in the middle of Pennsylvania, up in the northern neck of Michigan, and all around Wisconsin, because J.D. Vance, 39 years old, does have a good story to tell that would really, really relate with a lot of working class folks who may or may not have been thinking about voting in this thing. But after what happened on Saturday, and having somebody who looks and acts like them and has this compelling story, and a mamaw and a papaw, just like I used to have, it really does mean something to people.
Chuck, the Trump inner circle is very eager to see a vice presidential debate. Venue, time to be determined between Vice President Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance. Size that up for us, if you'd be so kind.
I think they're both very articulate. I think it would be a very good debate. And I think it would be the polar opposite of what we saw the other night from both of the candidates. Both of those candidates are in their late 70s or early 80s. You have two younger folks. You have a 39-year-old senator. You have somebody who had been a district attorney back in San Francisco. I think it would be like night and day, and I think it would be really good to see, and I think it would get a higher viewership.
Aaron, we talked in the open about the legal developments today, significant. Eileen Cannon, federal district judge, dismissing in its entirety the classified documents case and allegations of obstruction of justice against former President Trump, doing so on a technicality, not the merits, but that doesn't matter. The case, for all intents and purposes, now is gone. The effect you think that will have politically on this event here in Milwaukee?
Much like age being a concern for voters, the polling would have already included the indication that voters were aware of all of these cases and trials pending against Donald Trump. So I don't think that this is going to move any metrics for the president in his favor or away. However, for Democrats, I think they were banking a lot on that Donald Trump would spend his campaign in the theater of the courtroom, that he would not be able to go out on the trail, and that he would be tied up in litigation. Because this case has been dismissed, you won't be able to see that, and Donald Trump will be on the campaign trail. With reporting that Joe Biden says that he doesn't want to do events past 8 p.m., it is going to be a hard run to the finish, and Donald Trump's going to have the time to do lots of rallies.
Chuck, I want to ask you about this legal development today. Those here in Milwaukee, very gratified by it, consider it kind of a legal vindication for former President Trump. But I know Democrats will look at this and say, wait a minute, here's a Trump-appointed federal district judge who took the cues from a concurring opinion from one Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas, to make a ruling that is not in line with other federal judge interpretations of the special counsel appointment process. How do you think Democrats and maybe those independents or swing voters still up for grabs might digest today's legal news?
I think that activists, I think people that are, as we would say in the business, are very well read in, care a lot about it and see the injustice of what happened and see the appointment by a Trump judge and what had happened about what case she had cited. But let's just be honest, and this is the Democrat here. This is the liberal Democrat saying most voters don't know. They don't understand. They don't care. They really can't differentiate one court case from another. They're still reeling from what's happened with an assassination attempt on a presidential candidate on Saturday. Those things they see because they see on the front of everything. I just don't see in the focus groups that I'm doing all across battleground states at the court cases being one of the 1, 2, or 3 top issues. Well, that's motivating Democrats to show up. That's choice. That's the economy. It's other things that are in their purviews.
Chuck, I want to get your evaluation of where the Democratic conversation is about President Biden and the future of his campaign.
I think you're going to see a lot of that quelled. I mean, again, after what had happened on Saturday, you're not going to see Democrats trying to tear down or trying to replace a nominee. I've been talking to lots of other folks who've run presidential campaigns like I have. I've had a lot of privilege to be able to sit in the chair. And when you sit in the chair and the spotlight's on you, I understand the pressure that goes with that. And I think other folks know that we're too close now. And with what happened with the presidential candidate on Saturday, and again, an assassination attempt, I think you're going to see that quiet down a lot.
Chuck Rocha and Aaron Perrine, thank you very, very much for your time and your expertise. The Republican National Convention, as you can hear and see, is obviously in full swing right here in Milwaukee. Republican Senator Dan Sullivan from Alaska joins us next to discuss the official coronation of Donald Trump as the Republican Party nominee. That and much more. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS. The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides and our continuing coverage of the Republican National Convention. Look, ladies and gentlemen, every National Party convention is historic in its own right, but this one especially is because something has happened tonight that has never happened before in the long history of the Republican Party. For 3 consecutive election cycles, the same person has been nominated to lead the Republican Party as the presidential candidate, and that person is Donald Trump. He also made very big news today, naming Ohio Republican Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate. I'm joined here at the convention by one of Vance's Senate colleagues, Republican Senator from Alaska, Dan Sullivan. Dan, look at the camera, now look at me. I know that's going to be painful, but let's try to work through that.
Sure.
Senator, it's great to see you. First of all, your reaction to J.D. Vance's inclusion on President Trump's ticket.
Oh, I think this is a strong pick. You know, J.D. is a good friend of mine. By the way, you know, I just retired out of the Marine Corps, 30 years in the Marines. J.D. is a Marine, and pretty sure, did some research, first Marine ever to be on the vice presidential ticket. And there's never been a Marine president, so I love that as a Marine. But I will tell you this, he's incredibly thoughtful. He comes from a working family background, which has obviously influenced him tremendously. He's seen the challenges of working Americans, including the horrible opioid fentanyl challenges, and he's been a great voice for that, a great voice for veterans. So I think it's a great pick, and you know, he's got a lot of youth and energy.
No doubt. And as everyone who knows who's been around any Marines, there are no retired Marines, there are no former Marines, you're always a Marine.
Well, I was honored. You know, I retired about 3 months ago after 30 years. JD came to my retirement ceremony, so, you know, we Marines stick together.
No doubt, no doubt. It has been described by me and others that J.D. Vance can be fairly described as Make America Great Again 2.0, the next generation of that movement. Do you see it in that light?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
is that a good thing for the party?
Well, I think it's, I mean, just look at the enthusiasm here, right? We have, right now, what's going on in this convention, incredible unity, incredible energy, and what I think is not getting a lot of press, and I think it should, a really strong platform. 16 pages, very unifying, simple, common sense ideas, not just for Republicans, for all Americans. I encourage everybody to take a look at it. You read about 20 minutes, and it's a really strong platform on some key issues.
In other words, it's not a doorstop like other party platforms that would take a couple of hours to sift through.
Not only not a doorstop, Marsha Blackburn, another Senate colleague of mine, she chaired the platform committee, did a great job. I wanted to keep it in simple, direct terms on big ideas, but important ideas. The president read it, I think edited it a lot. I'm pretty sure Joe Biden's not going to edit the 240-page Democrat platform that they'll put out in a couple weeks.
Senator Sullivan, what effect do you believe the events of this weekend are having here in this convention and will for former President Trump as he navigates his way through all 4 days of this convention?
Well, look, I think that the horrific events on Saturday, an assassination attempt on President Trump that came this close, literally within an inch of probably killing him, not only impacts everybody here in this convention as Republicans, I think it impacts Americans. No American wants that. You know, we have our political differences. We can debate those as hard as we can, but political violence should not ever be part of the equation. So it's clearly bringing unity here. You saw President Trump's courage, defiance, which is pretty remarkable, right? Taking a bullet, getting tackled really hard by the Secret Service, and then getting up and showing that defiance and courage. But I think that's for Americans, not just Republicans, and we can't go down that path. Major, we can't go down that path.
As you well remember, during the primaries, there was a challenger to former President Trump, Nikki Haley, who served in his administration, dismissively referred to by the former president as bird brain. She was originally not invited to speak at this convention. After the events in Butler, Pennsylvania, there was a reassessment and a sense that no, unity and more inclusion is actually what needs to happen. Give me your reaction to Nikki Haley getting a primetime speaking position tomorrow night at this convention.
I think it's great.
Why?
I think it's great because, you know, she had a lot of Republican voters who
still does
supported her. And look, you win elections by being a big tent. Elections are about addition, not subtraction. And I think that her coming here with the strong amount of supporters that she's had is a good thing for certainly the Republican Party. I think it's a good thing for the country.
Where do you think this race sits right now? Every national party expects to get a little bit of a rise, a little bit of a bump out of the convention. Where do you think the race is now? Where do you hope or you expect to see in a week from now?
Well, look, I think there's a big difference going on right now, and that's you're seeing here unity, as I mentioned, energy, and a very strong support for a common vision in our Republican platform. If the Democrats are holding their convention right now, I don't think you'd see that at all. You certainly wouldn't see unity. You wouldn't see a common vision, and I'm not sure you'd see this kind of energy. As a matter of fact, I know you wouldn't.
Alaska Republican Senator Dan Sullivan. Great to see you.
Thank you, Major.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure to have you with us. Next, I speak with Congressman Mike Lawler, Republican from New York, and get his reaction to Senator J.D. Vance joining the Trump ticket.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now. We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. Earlier, I spoke to Republican Congressman Mike Lawler about his feelings on the J.D. Vance selection for the Republican ticket. You bear a slight resemblance to J.D. Vance, President Trump's pick as the nominee. I wanted to get first your reaction to J.D. Vance being added to the Trump ticket.
Well, look, obviously, as you talked about, a new voice, a first millennial on a presidential ticket ever. This is a guy who grew up from humble beginnings. His grandmother was a Blue Dog Democrat. Right. Grew up in the Rust Belt, obviously, enlisted in the U.S. Marines.
Wrote a best-selling book about not only his family, but the economic privations that affected that region in which he grew up, which he thought reflected some kind of indifference from Washington about the fate of that part of the country.
Absolutely, and that's part of the country that's going to determine who the next president is. You know, the Rust Belt, Appalachia, will have a tremendous impact, starting Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, obviously. So, he obviously comes from a part of the country that is going to have a big say in the outcome of this election. Again, this is a guy who enlisted in the U.S. Marines after 9/11, served in Iraq, came back home, created a successful venture capitalist business, has his law degree from Yale, obviously has risen pretty quickly in Republican politics. I will say my beard's a little better, but hey, you can't win them all.
Duly noted.
But look, I think he obviously is going to bring a fresh perspective and a voice for the working class in this country who, frankly, have hurt under Joe Biden's policies. The cost of groceries, the cost of gasoline, the cost of a home, the cost of rent has gone up astronomically in this country under Joe Biden. And obviously the migrant crisis at our southern border, 10 million migrants coming into our country since Joe Biden took office, larger than the state of Ohio, in which J.D. Vance represents.
I want to ask you, Congressman Lawler, about the evolution of J.D. Vance. Anyone who does a quick internet search, types in J.D. Vance, Trump 2016, can find a laundry list of pretty tough criticisms. His rhetoric was rhetorical heroin. He said he might be America's next Hitler. He was someone who said, hey, I know this part of the country. I know their difficulties, and Trump is kind of conning them into thinking he can do more than he actually will be able to. That rhetoric has not only subsided, J.D. Vance has become one of the most articulate and forceful exponents now of the Trump approach to not only rhetoric but policy. Talk to me about that evolution. What does it say, not only about J.D. Vance, but the modern Republican Party under President Trump?
Well, look, as you'll recall, during the 2020 presidential primaries, Kamala Harris said a lot of things about Joe Biden, including basically calling him a racist. So, look, things get said during the course of campaigns.
But J.D. wasn't a politician back then.
Things get said.
He was like an observer, speaking on behalf of his people.
During the course of the campaign, things get said about candidates all the time. I think at the end of the day, Donald Trump's record during his tenure in terms of job creation, in terms of economic growth prior to COVID causing that shutdown here in America, his foreign policy, his policy in terms of securing the border. Those are the issues that matter to the American people. Frankly, I don't think most people are going to care what someone said 8 years ago. I think they're going to care about what the policies are that are going to impact their life in this election. And I think when, at the end of the day, when this election is decided, it's going to be decided by the American people based on what they saw during Donald Trump's 4 years versus what they've seen during Joe Biden's 4 years. That's going to be the determinative factor.
From your vantage point, Congressman Lawler, what effect have the events of the last 36 to 48 hours had on this convention and the future of this campaign?
Look, but for the grace of God, we'd be having a very different discussion right now.
A very different convention. A very different
millimeters difference. And so, you know, obviously everyone is grateful that President Trump survived that assassination attempt. This is a time for moral clarity in our country, for Americans, regardless of your political party or view, to come together around a simple premise. Elections should be decided by votes at a ballot box, not by violence at a rally. And whatever our political differences are, and there's many in this country, and whatever our differences are in policy, we can have that robust debate and still respect each other as Americans. The rhetoric needs to stop. Donald Trump is not going to destroy our democracy if he's the next president of the United States. He's not a fascist. Yes, we have deep differences of opinion. And by the way, even within the Republican Party, we have differences of opinion at times. You fight those out through ideas. You don't fight them out through violence. And to me, I think what you're going to see this week is a unified Republican Party because America deserves leadership. They deserve unity focused on the issues that matter to the American people. Whether you're talking about the economy, whether you're talking about the border, whether you're talking about foreign policy, we have a lot of challenges right now, and we have to focus on solutions, not division, not overheated rhetoric that seeks to demonize one candidate or one party. All of us have a responsibility in that.
I'm sure you would agree with me, Congressman Lawler, that election results should not be contested with violence on the steps of the United States Capitol or inside the Capitol or at the doors of the House or Senate either.
No, listen, I was the first member of the New York State Assembly to put out a statement condemning what happened on January 6th. I have been very clear, whether it was January 6th, whether it was those who took control of a federal courthouse in Portland, whether it was those who burned a police station in Minneapolis, violence of any kind, political violence of any kind, should be universally condemned and rejected. We should always debate our issues through public discourse and debate and discussion and through legislation. That's what we have the ability to do. Our vote. Our vote is the way to exercise our political differences,
and the way to
not
confer
violence.
and the way to confer authority.
Absolutely.
In a peaceful, democratic process.
Absolutely.
Congressman Mike Lawler, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Tonight's convention is underway as the country is still reeling from the attempt on Donald Trump's life. Party leaders on both sides of the aisle are calling for national unity. Here is my latest for Eye on America. As bullets pierced the air and Donald Trump pitched to the ground, America found itself on the precipice of political horror. Then came the predictable sprint to our partisan corners.
I do believe that Joe Biden is responsible for the shooting.
The breathless and fact-free race to lay blame for the work of a deranged individual. President Biden sent the order, proclaimed a conservative Georgia congressman. A staffer for a Mississippi Democrat wished the shooter hadn't missed. The Democratic congressional aide later resigned. By morning, though, as a dazed country groped for some alternate sounds and more was known about the shooter, words began to soften. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise.
This hypercharged rhetoric just needs to be dialed down. Let's talk about our differences. We have big, big differences.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
Political disagreements can never, ever be addressed through violence.
A top Trump advisor who at first pointed blame at Democrats deleted the post and sent a memo saying the campaign would tolerate no post-attack harangues. And Trump implored the country to stand united.
It's time to cool it down.
President Biden capped off a day of what sounded like the beginning of rhetorical reflection.
Our unity is the most elusive of goals right now. Nothing is more important for us now than standing together. We can do this.
Maybe, but political passions have already spawned violence. Republicans wounded in the 2017 congressional baseball shooting, the January 6th riot, the shooting of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords.
Drop the hammer.
The hammer attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, and the mockery that followed.
How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know?
Partisanship remains our national reflex. Politicians feed the hunger for combative language. Mark Robinson, a leading candidate for governor in North Carolina, was free to sound like this.
Some folks need killing.
Can America cool down for more than a minute? If past is prologue, the answer is no. For now, political figures are offering a glimmer of light in an era of darkness. May it last. For Eye on America, I'm Major Garrett in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Stay with us after the break for a CBS News special report for live coverage of the Republican National Convention. And join us again tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for our coverage of Day 2 of the Republican National Convention. You are streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024? Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here. We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way. We'll take you places. We teach you new things. And we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Okay, let's go. You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going.
The clock, it's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
This is CBS.
This is a CBS News special, America Decides, Campaign 24, the Republican National Convention. Now reporting, Norah O'Donnell.
I am here in program, yeah. Hello, guys.
Good evening from Milwaukee. Tonight, Republicans begin presenting their case for giving Donald Trump a return to the White House and another 4 more years as president. Welcome to CBS News coverage of the Republican National Convention. If you can believe it, we're now 113 days away from the election, and this year's convention is different. It's unlike any other because it comes in the shadow of this weekend's attempted assassination of the former president during a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. What we know since then, that 20-year-old gunman was killed by a member of the Secret Service. The FBI now leading that investigation into the attack alongside the Secret Service and local law enforcement. And we've learned a number of new details about that investigation, which we will share with you tonight. But the big news here from the convention, Donald Trump selecting Ohio Junior Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate. Now, J.D. Vance was elected to the Senate in 2022. He was also endorsed by the former president during his campaign. And this long-awaited VP announcement came just before Trump's son, Eric, officially pledged Florida's delegates in a roll call to push Mr. Trump over the threshold and secure the Republican presidential nomination for the 3rd time. That's noteworthy because the last 3 conventions have all nominated Donald Trump, a reminder of just what a hold he has on the Republican Party. I want to introduce my CBS News colleagues here with me, Chief Election Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa, Political Correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns, and Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett. Great to have all of you here as we watch this Republican convention. Major, just to start with you, we were talking about this. I mean, we've covered a number of presidential campaigns. This is my 7th. I can't remember a 48 hours that has been so consequential.
No, Nora, forgive me. Every political convention in America is historic. Every single one of them. Mm-hmm. But this is historic in its own right, and there are layers to that history. You mentioned J.D. Vance, the first millennial ever to be included in a presidential ticket in American history. Not only is Donald Trump the 3rd consecutive nominee for the Republican Party, that's never happened before. In the long history of the Republican Party, only one other person, Richard Nixon, was nominated 3 times, but not consecutively. And I covered and you covered the 2016 campaign. There was still a bit of an arm's length relationship between that Republican Party and Donald Trump. No longer. There is an intensity here, Nora. There is a fervor here for former President Trump that existed clearly before the events, the terrifying events in Butler, Pennsylvania, but they have been intensified in the aftermath. People here feel a sense of mission about this campaign and about the nominee, former President Trump. And one last observation. That sense of fervor, they tell me, and I know they've told our colleagues, will translate into activism, door knocking, texting, phone calling, all the fundamentals of a successful presidential campaign. You feel it very resolutely here inside Fiserv Forum, where the convention is occurring.
And what about that, Robert? I mean, the J.D. Vance thing is kind of the big news today. And I think first and foremost, in addition to his biography, it shows how powerful Donald Trump's sons are in this campaign, right?
It really does, Nora. This pick was former President Trump's pick, but it was also something that Donald Trump Jr., who has been speaking extensively today to CBS News, he was nudging it behind the scenes. He wanted his father to have someone at his side who could be a generational torchbearer for the movement that Trump has created since his 2016 campaign. To not have it just be some kind of spasm in American political history, to have it be something that lasts, that has legs politically, that has a vice president, someone who might run for president one day, advocating for the policies, the ideas laid out by former President Donald Trump. There's also a connection to that area of the country where the assassination attempt took place. Where was former President Trump on Saturday? In Butler, Pennsylvania.
Very close to Ohio.
Very close to Ohio. And what this Trump campaign is trying to do with the selection of Senator Vance, it's not just have a generational contrast, to have someone who shares the views of former President Trump, but they want to run up the score in Western Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, in Michigan. When I talk to the Biden campaign and I talk to the Trump campaign, they say this election could come down to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So J.D. Vance, he is now the running mate, but you can expect him to essentially be, based on my reporting, running for governor in those three respective states to make sure former President Trump can get the industrial Midwest to turn out with the help of one of their own.
And how on message when today the Republicans here, when the theme of tonight is to make America wealthy again, that they have in J.D. Vance someone whose book is about his impoverished background, how he worked his way up from Appalachia through a family that struggled through drug abuse and other issues. He ultimately joined the Marines, went to Ohio State, then went to Yale Law School, then went into private equity, married a lawyer. Caitlin Huey-Burns, I mean, you've traveled so much on the road. You've talked to so many voters. How do you see how he may resonate? I mean, interestingly, both with the Republican Party, but also with the Democratic base, and particularly female voters in the Democratic base.
It's really interesting, Nora, because you mentioned that Midwest push, and especially important given the Biden campaign's focus. But sources around J.D. Vance that I've been talking to also point out that something underestimated about him is that his pedigree goes a long way, not just his Appalachia connections, but also those roots at Yale, those roots in Silicon Valley. He has been a top fundraiser for Donald Trump, brought in more money than most of those other vice presidential contenders, has those connections to Peter Thiel, others that are speaking here tonight from that group. And following his Senate campaign, trying to make those inroads in the suburbs. So the first ad that he ran in the general election for the Senate was a pitch not only from him, but from his wife, Usha, who is accomplished in her own right. But that image of the two of them and their three small children is also a pitch for those suburban voters that this party has been hemorrhaging in the Donald Trump era.
Mm-hmm. I'm reaching over, if you could see me, I was reaching over to my large binder of notes here because I wanted to talk. I think people are so intrigued about who J.D. Vance is. You know, a lot of people may have read the book, Hillbilly Elegy, which is a longtime bestseller, may have seen the Netflix special that was shown on some big screens. But today, the president, Joe Biden, saying he's a clone of Donald Trump. Arguably, in some ways, he's more conservative than Donald Trump on issues like abortion rights. Today we heard from Jen O'Malley-Dillon, who is the Biden campaign manager today, making the case and arguing that J.D. Vance supports a national ban on abortion, has voted against protecting IVF. What's the truth on that?
Nora, This is going to be a key issue, as we've been talking about, but especially in the vice presidential race, because this is the top issue for Vice President Kamala Harris. This is what the campaign puts her out on time and time again, and this is the top issue in her portfolio. So when you're thinking about these two candidates going together, this matters. J.D. Vance, while he was running for Senate, expressed support for federal limitations. But interestingly, in an interview just recently, he supported Donald Trump's line that he's been saying recently, which is that we support states to make this decision. So kind of moving towards that camp. As we all know, the Trump campaign has acknowledged that abortion is an issue that is difficult for Republicans. And so you've seen that focus from Donald Trump on states' rights. And so in that debate, perhaps, between Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance, this will be something that is a laser focus of hers.
And what's interesting about Senator Vance on abortion and all these other issues is that in 2016, then candidate Trump picked Vice President, then Governor Pence, because he wanted to reassure conservatives that he was one of them. This time around, by picking Senator Vance, he's saying to his base, I'm putting one of you on the ticket. He's going to take the position a lot of you share, but at the same time, he's going to allow himself as the nominee. Former President Trump will allow himself to maybe tack towards the center. He's not talking a lot about abortion rights on the campaign trail. He's talking about immigration, border security, and the economy.
And J.D. Vance will finesse that difference of opinion about abortion, and at least in terms of emphasis, by saying Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. The Republican Party reflects his views. I support the President of the United States. I support the platform. End of story. He will try to bury these differences or at least gloss them over during the campaign, because that's what running mates do. Running mates defer to those who lead the ticket and who have created the party platform upon which they run.
As you can see behind me, they are now playing a video contrasting the economic policies of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and people talking, the working class voters and others who are concerned about inflation, which is one of the issues that voters talk a lot about. Is their number one issue is inflation. I want to bring in CBS News political contributor Terry Sullivan. He is in Washington, and he was Senator Marco Rubio's presidential campaign manager in 2016. And Terry, so good to see you. How do you see Senator J.D. Vance adding to this ticket?
Look, I think this is a real show of strength by the Trump campaign. They went with someone who the president would feel, Donald Trump would feel comfortable with, that he would feel that he could work with, and that shared his views. And that was really important to him. And this was not some sort of political pick that he came from this state or that state, or was going to bring this certain demographic here, or kind of a DEI kind of political hire. This was, who do I identify with? Who can I work with, and who can I serve in office with? And so it was really a strong, a show of force, if you will, by the Trump campaign.
Also want to bring in Joel Payne, a CBS News political contributor who has worked on Democratic campaigns. And Joel, how do you see J.D. Vance and what he brings to this ticket, or how do you see how Democrats will try and run against him?
Well, one, I think he's a double down on MAGA. It's pretty clear. It's not a strategic political pick. It's a vibes pick to make sure that Donald Trump has a running mate that is completely aligned. Any thought of reaching out to Nikki Haley voters, to moderate voters, is out the window with a pick like J.D. Vance. You could have picked a Doug Burgum that could do that. You could make an appeal to African-American and Hispanic voters with Marco Rubio or Tim Scott, respectively. But they didn't. They decided to pick J.D. Vance. And I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. In terms of Democrats, I will tell you, he is the candidate that Democrats wanted to run against for many reasons, the double down on MAGA being one, but also the fact that his record is chock full of things that Democrats can contrast. And he's somebody who's been very critical of Donald Trump in the past. And I can promise you're going to see a lot of statements that J.D. Vance has made talking about Donald Trump. I know this is heated rhetoric. He called him America's Hitler at one point. This is someone who Donald Trump is now running with. And I think you're going to see a lot of that this fall going into Election Day.
Joel Payne and Terry Sullivan, thank you so much. Want to bring in Chief Political Analyst John Dickerson. John, good to see you. I haven't yet had the opportunity to chat with you today. I'm very curious what you think about Senator J.D. Vance joining this ticket.
I'm envious of all of you in the booth there, Nora. I have two things that come to mind. One, just on the most recent fracture in our political life. J.D. Vance issued one of the strongest, some would say, intemperate responses to the shooting, essentially blaming the Biden administration for that shooting, when most other politicians were saying that's precisely the kind of response that American politics and public discourse needs less of. And then, as other people have mentioned, but Joe Biden has never said anything as harsh about Donald Trump as J.D. Vance has said about him, comparing him to heroin, of course, the American Hitler. And so the other thing I would just note is his position on Ukraine is like Donald Trump's, highly, highly skeptical of future U.S. involvement.
Let's dig into that further in just a moment. But first, I do want to note once again that the theme here at the RNC tonight is Make America Wealthy Again. And to drive that home, party leaders have brought in what they are calling everyday Americans to the stage. And so speaking right now is Sarah Workman. She's from Arizona. She's a single mother who moved from California. Let's listen in.
How they're destroying the American spirit. Everywhere we look, there's pain, chaos, and crisis. Inflation, open borders, woke indoctrination in our schools, violence in our cities, and unjust rulings in our courts. All of it is eroding one of America's greatest strengths, our optimism. While the left is trying to divide us with identity politics, we are here tonight because we believe that America is always, should be, one nation under God. In addition to the economic pain, the Democrats' open border policies have shattered my family. With drugs so readily available, my husband fell victim to the drug epidemic. It tore our family apart, and now I raise my son alone. But I know there is hope. That is what this election represents for all of us who have been forgotten over the last 4 years. Hope. We need God in our hearts and Donald Trump back in the White House. If you're watching tonight and you hear your own story and mine, Donald Trump put me on this stage to show that he hears us, he sees us, and we are forgotten no more. I find peace in God's promise that says, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, I will heal your nation. Amen. With faith, hope, and love in my heart, I know we will make America great again.
Please welcome United States Senator Katie Britt of Alabama.
Good evening, Milwaukee. I'm Katie Britt. We are all here tonight for one reason. We need to change the direction of our nation. And Donald Trump is the change we need. To my fellow moms and dads across America, I think we all know that raising a family is hard. Add in smartphones and social media, and we already had plenty to worry about. But then Joe Biden and Kamala Harris came around. Now our lives are that much more difficult and way more expensive. Under Biden-Harris, prices are high and expectations, well, they're low. Grocery prices are up more than 21%. Electricity is up 31%. Gas is up 48%. Mortgage rates have more than doubled, and rent is skyrocketing. To me, these aren't just numbers. This is pain for millions of Americans. It means that so many American families have to live with so much less. This is too high a price to pay for an administration that has brought us to such lows. The American people won't have the wool pulled over our eyes. We see how Biden and Harris keep making things worse. And we know the current president is not capable of turning things around. His weakness is costing us our opportunity, our prosperity, our security, our safety. Each diminished, all in decline, just like the man in the Oval Office. And it doesn't have to be this way. Under President Trump, we had the strongest economy in history. That's right. You didn't need to go into debt just to make ends meet. Energy dominant, stable prices, secure borders, safe streets, strong families and communities. That's what Donald Trump will deliver. With President Trump, the tough choice was which job offer to accept. Now, it's which second job to take just to pay the bills. Your family can't afford this costly and dangerous decline for 4 more years. 4 more years of Biden-Harris will impose a lifetime of financial damage on our children and our nation. It is time to return President Trump to the White House. Yes. Republicans will put parents, families, and hard-working Americans first. With President Trump back in the White House, we will reawaken the exceptionalism of the greatest nation ever known. We will defeat decline, dust off our dreams, and forge our future. Because families across our nation deserve better. Once again, America will be the land of limitless opportunity for all. And paving that path starts today. So let's roll up our sleeves, send President Trump back to the White House, and get America back on track. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome United States Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina.
Wow. 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 Thank you so much. Thank you. Hello, Milwaukee! Are you ready for 4 more years of Donald Trump? Oh, me too. Listen, if you didn't believe in miracles before Saturday, you better be believing right now. Thank God Almighty that we live in a country that still believes in the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the Alpha and the Omega. And our God still saves, He still delivers, and He still sets free. Because on Saturday, the devil came to Pennsylvania holding a rifle, but an American lion got back up on his feet and he roared. Oh yeah, he roared. Yeah, yes he did. You see, America, this is a difficult time for our nation. Inflation is crushing families. Illegal immigration is crushing American workers. Failing schools and victimhood culture are crushing our poorest kids. And the weakness of the commander-in-chief has invited world wars all around our world. Joe Biden is asleep at the wheel and we're headed over a cliff. We hear despair in the voices of a millennial couple raising 2 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment because they can't afford a house. We see pain on the faces of Gold Star parents because their commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, literally forgets their son died in uniform on his watch. America, we deserve better. We deserve so much better. I was raised by a single mom in poverty. We had plastic spoons, not silver spoons. But she taught me to work hard, to take responsibility, and reject victimhood. Thank God for my wonderful mama. I know this is going to offend the liberal elites. Every time I say it, it offends them. But let me say it one more time. America is not a racist country. No, we're not. But if you were looking for racism today, you'd find it in cities run by Democrats. Look on the south side of Chicago. Poor black kids trapped in failing schools. Thousands shot every single year, including one of my former interns, Daquan. But there's good news. It's conservative values that restores hope. It's Republican policies that lifts people up. I partnered with the greatest president of my generation, President Donald J. Trump. On the biggest tax cuts ever for working people and single moms, and opportunity zones for neighborhoods that need them most. But Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they give illegal immigrants free hotel rooms while our veterans sleep on the streets. Disgusting, disgusting. Trump secured our border once, and Donald Trump will secure it again. This November, we are not deciding simply the fate for the next 4 years. We're setting a course for the next 40 years. I see our heartland filled with huge American factories, powered by abundant American energy, building what America needs, creating generational wealth for blue-collar workers. You see, we are the Republican Party of Frederick Douglass and of Abraham Lincoln, of Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. But we, 4 more years. I love it. Awesome. We are not simply the party of our leaders. We are also the party of a young woman in Wisconsin taking over her family farm, an Hispanic father working 16-hour days in Nevada, and a black teenager in Philly starving for opportunity. We're not just the grand old party of the past. We are the great opportunity party of America's future. And there's only, hear me clearly, and there's only one person who can make that vision a reality: Donald J. Trump. God bless America.
And a rousing speech by Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, who was on Donald Trump's list to become a potential vice presidential candidate, mentioning what happened on Saturday, that attempted assassination attempt, and saying the devil came out on Saturday, in his words, and met an American lion who got up and fought. And then drawing into some of the policies, drawing a sharp contrast with Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
So, Nora, there is a linguistic effort that Senator Tim Scott engaged in that's very important to the grassroots of the Republican Party in the Trump era. Not only are there evangelical Christians there, but there are many apostolic Christians, charismatic Christians who have gravitated to the Trump movement. And this speaks to their sense of America and this moment. They believe the Democratic Party, correctly or incorrectly, but from their point of view, is a secularized party that de-emphasizes the role not only of religion, but of a Christian faith in this country. They very much see Donald Trump as someone who is a warrior against that. And they also think of these things in kind of very arch and contrasting ways, that evil is real, that the devil is real, and that Donald Trump is a messenger up against that. I'm not saying that's a universal point of view in this country, or even a near universal point, but for the people who are in the Trump base, that language, the devil, a lion who roared, is an answer back, is reflective of their exact sense of where America is, what Donald Trump represents, and what their deepest held beliefs about the merging of religion and politics mean.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring in CBS Mornings co-host Tony DeCopel. He is on the floor of the convention. Tony, the music is playing, a celebratory mood.
Oh, my gosh, Nora. Good evening to all of you up there. You're living in a world of measured analysis and rational thought, and I down here on the floor am living in a world of pure emotion. And that emotion tonight, sheer happiness. For Republicans anyway, this might be the happiest place on earth short of a Taylor Swift concert. In fact, I mentioned that to one guy, and he corrected me, maybe short of a Toby Keith concert. But since he's no longer with us, this is the place to be. I want to give you a little bit of the lay of the land. There's been a lot of dancing in the aisles, and there are some key parts of the stadium here. Clark, if you could take a shot of those red seats up there that say, "Make America Great Once Again." Those are the Trump family seats. People are watching those very closely tonight, hoping that maybe Melania makes an appearance in addition to the Trump children. Now, Clark, a little bit lower than that, you will see there's already a crowd building there alongside the Colorado, the Virginia, and the Idaho delegations. That is a canyon of waiting applause for J.D. Vance. The expectation is that Donald Trump's newly announced vice presidential pick will come out of that tunnel, pay a visit to his fellow statesmen here in the great state of Ohio, before taking that stage and delivering what everyone here hopes will be the speech of the night. One other detail for you. It's been since May that Donald Trump has secured the sufficient delegates pledged in his direction, but it was only today that they were officially his and the nomination was his. I've gone up to multiple people and said, was it everything you were hoping for, this moment in your candidate's history, in your country's history? Time and again, they tell me it was everything and more. Someone else will pipe in, everything and more plus. One other detail, a lot of hand gestures. People will reference this to me, and I'm not sure what it is, and I'll have to ask for more, and then I can just barely read their lips, and what they're saying is landslide. This is going to be a landslide. That matters for Democrats. It matters for Republicans as well, because we all know enthusiasm leads to turnout, and turnout is what wins elections. So the dancing in the aisle here could ultimately lead to dancing in the aisle in November, which is why this is so important. I'll send it back up to you guys for some more careful analysis.
And careful we will be. Tony DeCopel, thank you with the gesticulating from the convention floor. We greatly appreciate it. But you do make an excellent point about enthusiasm. It matters when it's get out the vote time. Let's bring in our senior White House and political correspondent, Ed O'Keefe. He is also on the convention floor. And Ed, you had a really interesting interview earlier today with Eric and Donald Trump Jr.
That's right. Donald Trump Jr. telling us that he had a big influence, as we've reported, over his father's decision on a running mate, pointing out that he really likes the fact that the 39-year-old J.D. Vance is someone who demonstrates the kind of success at an early age that his father had, pointing out that Trump Tower was built, and he's hoping that that youthful energy of J.D. Vance rubs off and signals the beginnings of the next generation of MAGA 2.0. I have gone, Nora, and you will appreciate this, deep into the heart of the Texas delegation to get some perspective on all of this. I am joined by Texas's youngest delegate, 20-year-old Hayden Head, and Alabama's youngest delegate, 22-year-old Logan Glass, both of whom perhaps also represent the future of the Republican Party. Hayden, to you first, because we found you first. What did you make of the decision to pick J.D. Vance today?
Well, I think Vance was a great pick, primarily because of his age, but also it comes from a swing state, which guarantees that the voter turnout will be much higher for Republicans there, as we've seen in many other cases in other states. So I'm very happy with that pick from a strategic perspective, just because it helps with the Electoral College. But also on a personal level, I do believe that Vance is very capable of carrying on the movement once Trump is out of office come 4 years down the road.
And Logan, you said you were surprised by this choice.
Yes, sir. I was taken by surprise personally. I thought it would be Doug Burgum, Marco Rubio, or Tim Scott. So J.D. Vance was certainly a surprise to me, but a welcome one. I think J.D. Vance is going to help President Trump make America great again. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to my mom, my Uncle Phil, and all the folks back home watching. We've got a country to save in November, and we're going to make America great again with the Trump-Vance ticket.
All right. Let's hope Mom was watching. Nora, back up to you.
Ed, thank you. It is so great to hear from the delegates here and get their reaction, because just like us, they did not know who Donald Trump was going to pick, and they have many people that they respect and like in the party and who they hope to lead the party. So great to hear that perspective. Ed, thank you so much from the floor. Ahead, we're going to hear from Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. He's coming up soon. We'll be right back.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Welcome back. On stage now at the Republican National Convention is Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. Let's listen in.
Virginian, from a family like a lot of families, with ups and downs and highs and lows. My mom was a nurse, and she was my hero. She pulled our family together after my dad lost his job. At 15, washing dishes and flipping eggs, I learned that there is dignity in work. At the height of the pandemic 4 years ago, I asked my amazing wife, Suzanne, to go on a walk with me. I told her I planned to quit my job and run for governor. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and a quivering lip and asked, "Governor of what?" We prayed together, and we asked God for guidance and wisdom. and we said if elected, we would serve. After 12 years of only electing Democrats statewide, in November 2021, Virginians elected a Republican outside businessman as their 74th governor. And I believe this year, Virginia will elect another Republican outside businessman as President of the United States. President Trump proved that common sense conservative leadership works. It works for America. And we're proving it in Virginia, too. $5 billion of tax relief, backing the blue. Slashing red tape, declaring loudly that, yes, parents matter. And creating jobs, lots of jobs. Virginia now has record job growth, and we were just named America's top state for business. Friends, could this election be more simple? It's common sense versus chaos. It's strength versus weakness. Friends, it's not just Republicans who see this. It's Republicans, independents, and lots of Democrats. It's Americans. Under President Trump, America had high growth and low inflation. Under Joe Biden, America has low growth and high inflation. 66% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck. Moms and dads worrying, can they buy new shoes for their kids going back to school? Can they write the tuition check for college? Will they ever be able to retire? Under President Trump, 2.4 million Americans were lifted out of poverty. Women, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans all saw record low employment. Under Donald J. Trump, we once again will have that rip-roaring economy that lifts up all Americans. That is our tomorrow. A tomorrow where work is celebrated, where taxes are cut, and inflation is slashed, where we cut red tape, where we unleash American energy dominance, where businesses proudly say, "Made in America." Where entrepreneurs dream and small businesses thrive, where Americans from any background can pour their God-given talents into building their American dream. This is the moment. This is our moment to make America the land of opportunity again. A nation built on a basic truth that we are granted certain unalienable rights, not by a king, but by an almighty creator. And that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our foundational principles are non-negotiable. They are inscribed on our national soul. My fellow Americans, the spirit of hope is spreading. Everyone can feel it, and it will sweep across this nation when we elect Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Please welcome the CEO of Boya Foods, America First Policy Institute board member.
And that was Virginia's Governor Glenn Youngkin. Want to bring now in Michael Whatley. He is the chairperson of the Republican National Committee. Chairman, good to have you here. How do you view so far how everything is going on day one?
We've had a great day, and a great night. We're excited, to have all of these delegates, alternates, guests here from all around the country. We feel blessed, honestly, to be here in the first place, and the electricity in the room is just awesome.
So much has changed in 48 hours since that attempted assassination on Donald Trump. Do you think we will see him tonight in the 10 o'clock hour?
Stay tuned. We will see a lot of surprises that we're going to have at the convention throughout the week.
But are they ready here if Donald Trump appears?
I think everybody is ready to see the president. There's no question about it. You talk about the events on Saturday, talk about the shooting that we saw. It is an absolute miracle that he is here with us. And we are heartbroken over the families of the others that were shot and killed. Just a complete travesty, frankly. But we are beyond relieved, beyond grateful that President Trump is here. That the fact that he wanted to get to Milwaukee to such a degree that he came in yesterday, just a day afterwards, is really, truly remarkable.
The first convention I covered was in 1996, and I've been to every single one since, Democratic and Republican. And, they're a great occasion to rile up your base, right? To throw red meat, we call it political red meat, right, to the crowd and draw sharp contrasts. And some of the language can get quite heated. Did you deliver a message to some of the speakers here in the wake of Saturday about how they should approach their remarks?
Yeah, not only me, but I think that what we have seen from the president himself, we need to be talking about unity. President Trump has unified the Republican Party in its entirety, like we have not seen in generations here. But this is more. This is about the American people, and we need to unify the American people. And we need to talk about the shared experiences that they're having right now. The fact that we are running a campaign based on outreach to all American families. It's not lost on us, and I think that as we looked at this convention and setting up the themes for each of the nights, what we want to talk about are the issues that the American families are facing and the solutions that President Trump is putting on the table.
Mm-hmm. And I know you had a call with your counterpart at the Democratic National Committee. Did you two agree on anything?
Well, it was a very gracious call, and I was really very appreciative that he reached out and offered his prayers, and I think it was very special to me that he was willing to do that. And I think, look, everybody knows right now we need to lower the temperature. Everybody understands that there is no place in American politics or anywhere else in America for this kind of an action, for this kind of violence, and so we do need to step back. I think we need to take some time and reflect what is important in this election cycle. Because winning is not important as much as making sure that we are fighting for the right things, and that is fighting for the American people, fighting for American families.
So people have changed their remarks?
I think that everybody is understanding of what took place and the import for it. And I'll tell you, I changed my speech.
You did?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that we're going to see a lot of reflection by our speakers. But the theme here really is about the American families, and it's about unity, and you're going to see it in all 4 nights.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen any internal polling in the last couple of days about how this race may be shifting?
No, I haven't. But what I will say is that we've seen over the last several weeks that this race is changing, that this race is evolving. What we're seeing is Donald Trump is not only leading in on the national polls, but he's leading in the battleground state polls across the map. And he's winning in those polls because he's winning in the issue polls. Mm-hmm. The American people want change. The policies that Joe Biden has unleashed on America, his inflationary spending, the fact that he has opened up our border and invited 10 million illegal immigrants to come across that border, make every state a border state. These are things the American people want to see changed. And when we look at the handling of all of these issues, it's not surprising that President Trump has a lead, and that's being reflected in the battleground states and the national polls.
Mm-hmm. Major Garrett is here with us as well.
Mr. Chairman, what effect do you think J.D. Vance being brought on the ticket will have geographically in the all-important states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin?
I think it's going to be a tremendous benefit for all of us. This is a guy who is from the heartland. This is a guy whose entire campaign when he was running for Senate was based on reaching the American families in the heartland. This is a guy who came, from a background like he did in Appalachia, and has come up through the ranks, through the military, through the university, through law school, to be a United States Senator. It really is the embodiment of the American dream, and I think that he is going to be a force for this ticket in those Rust Belt states.
It was a suspenseful afternoon here on the convention floor. When did you learn it was J.D. Vance, and how did you learn it was J.D. Vance?
I learned it on Truth. I was refreshing Truth about every minute for about 3 hours waiting to see.
So even a party insider such as yourself, sir, got it through the social media.
We absolutely did.
You're just like us.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you about this. The Biden campaign has circled North Carolina on the map as a place that they believe they can make inroads and possibly pull back from the results in 2020. What is your assessment about North Carolina?
We feel great about North Carolina. I was the state party chair there for 5 years, was a senior advisor in 2016, and then ran the state in 2020. We feel very, very good about where we are in that state because it is a state, it's a purple state, right? 30% are Republican, 33% are Democrat, 37% are unaffiliated, and we've been able to win because Republicans are listening to the North Carolina voters and understanding the issues that they care about and putting solutions on the table. We are now running that campaign all across the country, and so if you think about every one of our battleground states, the purple states, the approach is absolutely the same. You got to carry, obviously, your Republican base, but you need to reach out to every family because just the Democrats will not get Joe Biden across the line. Just the Republicans will not get Donald Trump across the line. We've got to be able to win in the middle, and that is why we are reaching out to every American family on this campaign.
Chairman, political rallies are such a part of the fabric of the Trump campaign and the tragedy that we saw over the weekend. Obviously, security measures will have to be evaluated going forward, but how do you see how the public might view Donald Trump in public going forward?
We're going to have to wait and see. I think, obviously, there's going to be an assessment on what happened, what could have been done to try and prevent that, what we can do going forward in the future. I think it's a little premature on that right now because there are going to be those investigations that are going to take place. But look, I will tell you this. Nobody in politics over the last several generations has talked to the American people directly like Donald J. Trump. And even when we were in COVID and we weren't able to necessarily go out and do the rallies, he was able to connect directly with people, whether it's through press conferences or through smaller events, even over the course of the last several months where he's been doing events. So we're going to find a way for him to talk directly to the American people. But I'll tell you, I hope the rallies get to continue because, like you said, they're awesome. It is really a lot of fun. It's a great opportunity for everybody in these battleground states to come out and hear a message directly from the boss.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are still concerned, certainly, about security after what has happened. A number of people, not only Trump supporters who were there, but others who were covering that rally have been very rattled by what happened, and that investigation continues. And I know the head of the Department of Homeland Security is saying today that the service, Secret Service, is adding protection not only to President Biden, but former President Trump. They are reevaluating everything. Chairman Whatley, thank you so much for taking time. We know this is a busy first day of a big 4-day convention.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much. And when we come back, we're going to hear from South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. She's going to be speaking shortly. You're watching CBS News coverage of the Republican National Convention.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
This is a CBS News special. America Decides, the Republican National Convention. Now reporting, Norah O'Donnell.
Welcome back to night 1 of the Republican National Convention, where a lot is happening, and we could see Donald Trump tonight in the 10 o'clock Eastern Time hour. That would be his first public appearance since that attempted assassination of him. We don't know. We don't have that confirmed yet. There's just some discussion that he may make an appearance here, and certainly in past conventions, he loves to be seen every single night. He could appear on the floor, or he could more likely appear in the family box. So that's something we're waiting to hear more on. Let's check in with senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. He is on the convention floor with not 1, but 2 former Wisconsin governors, Tommy Thompson and Scott Walker. Ed?
Norah, we're big on exclusive interviews at CBS, and this is a world exclusive. Never before have 2 former Wisconsin Republican governors appeared together. Tommy Thompson, governor, great to see you. Scott Walker, great to see you.
It's great to be with you, Ed.
How many of these have you been to, you said?
I have been to 12 of these national conventions, 48 years.
And the first one was?
It was Ronald Reagan versus Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford won a very contested primary. The last time they fought it out on the floor. It was fantastic.
They don't make them like that anymore, do they?
No, they don't. But this one is pretty close.
Yeah.
After the assassination attempt.
How big a deal is it to finally have a convention in Milwaukee? This was supposed to happen 4 years ago for the Democrats.
Well, it's awesome. I actually helped try to get that last convention in. We were pretty sad just as a state not to have that, but to have this here, it's fabulous for the state of Wisconsin. It's fabulous for Milwaukee. They're having a great time.
So, President Biden says Wisconsin's part of his blue wall. Democrats, if they have any hope of holding on to the Senate, need to see Tammy Baldwin, the incumbent senator, reelected. What does a J.D. Vance pick today do to the state of the race in Wisconsin?
Well, between the two of us, we've won 7 statewide elections.
So you know a thing or two.
We know a thing or two about that. He's got to go out and show he's a fighter for everyday Americans like the people here in Wisconsin, make it more affordable, more secure, and more safe.
And we're teaming up together to carry the state.
Yeah.
For Donald Trump. And that iconic photo of him coming up with blood in his face, the American flag. All we have to do is show that in every hamlet, every village, city in Wisconsin, and we win.
All right, Governor Thompson, good to be with you. Thank you for being here. Milwaukee's lovely. Governor Walker, thank you. Nora, back up to you.
Ed O'Keefe with that world exclusive. Thank you. A quick note of reporting before we listen to Kristi Noem.
Johnson of Wisconsin said earlier tonight in his speech on this convention floor that Democrats, in his view, are, quote, a clear and present danger to America in the light of the assassination attempt. That raised a lot of eyebrows here. What was the senator talking about? Well, Senator Ron Johnson just texted CBS News. He said, quote, they loaded the first draft of my speech rather than the revision I made in the light of Saturday on the teleprompter. It was mostly the same speech, but I would have liked to have delivered that final draft to deliver tonight. So Senator Ron Johnson, Republican of Wisconsin, claiming tonight to CBS News that when he called Democrats a clear and present danger to the United States, he was reading an old draft of a speech. It's another example of how the assassination attempt is complicating this political moment for the country and for Republicans gathering here in particular.
Robert Costa with that new reporting. Thank you. Let's now listen into South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem.
Economy has been a beacon of freedom for America. Most of you probably first heard about me during COVID, didn't you? Because South Dakota was the only state in the country that stayed open for business. We didn't mandate anything. We never ordered a single business or a church to close. I never even defined what an essential business was, because I don't believe that the government has the authority to tell you that your business isn't essential. When other states were pushing mandates and lockdowns, instead in South Dakota, we hit the gas. We embraced liberty. We told our story and we invited people to come and to enjoy our beautiful state. Now, all of the things that conservatives have always talked about, we just did it, and it worked. Our economy took off, and since I've been governor, we broke the national record for the lowest unemployment rate in American history at 1.8%. In South Dakota, everybody works. We paid off state debts and bonds. We fixed dams and bridges. We built roads. We have a fully funded pension plan and a AAA credit rating. We broke records for surpluses, and we balance our budget every single year. And last year in South Dakota, we passed the largest tax cut in South Dakota history. Under my administration, incomes in our state have gone up 36%. Women-owned businesses are thriving. We also have the highest birth rate in the nation. People are having babies because they're happy. And in South Dakota, we love babies. Our mental health challenges have gone down, our suicide rates are declining, And we are the #1 state in the country for a decline in overdoses because people have hope. We're growing so fast that we needed more workers to catch up. So we launched the most successful workforce recruitment campaign in the history of South Dakota. And they have come by the thousands to join us and to live with us. Do you guys remember those ads when I was a really lousy plumber and a really terrible electrician? Do you remember those? Well, since we started those ads, we have seen a 78% increase in licensed plumbers in the state of South Dakota. We've seen a 44% increase in electricians in our state. Now, people aren't moving to South Dakota for our beaches or for our beautiful January weather. They are moving to our state for opportunity and for freedom. And all of this happened because our people were bold. We took action, and I was strong. Now, South Dakota proved that freedom will make America wealthy again. And with President Trump in the White House, with Senator J.D. Vance by his side, we will prove it across America. Listen, 2 days ago, the whole world changed. Evil displayed itself in the very worst way, through a cowardly act. An innocent American lost his life, and we will continue to lift his family up in our prayers every single day. Prior to this week, we already knew that President Donald Trump was a fighter. He is the toughest man that I have ever met. Nobody has endured more than what he has gone through. They've attacked his reputation, they impeached him, they tried to bankrupt him, and they unjustly prosecuted him. But even in the most perilous moment this week, his instinct was to stand and to fight. Donald J. Trump is our man in the arena. He will never stop fighting for us. He will never stop, and now he is bringing all of us together. Now, I know that many of you are angry, but now is the time to unite. And we have to get to work. We have to win the hearts and minds of every single American. Wake them up with truth and with wisdom. We need to listen to them. You can't win people over by arguing with them. Visit with your neighbors, at your job, at your church, at the gas station, or even at the grocery store. Listen, there are moments in our history, often after great hardship and tragedy, when true leaders unite our country. At one time, President Lincoln, he united our country. He delivered my favorite presidential address of all time. In fact, it's the only speech or poem or song that I ever made my kids memorize when they were young, when they were little. It was the Gettysburg Address, and it was delivered during our nation's bloodiest conflict. That speech so inspired people that they continued to fight for years, and they lost loved ones in order to preserve this union we call the United States of America. Now, at that time, President Lincoln encouraged us to take increased devotion, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Like Lincoln, in the midst of our pain and division, Donald Trump is calling us to be touched by the better angels of our nature. As Paul wrote in 2 Timothy, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. We must not be afraid. Even in our darkest days, we have never once given up hope. So don't quit on America. If we lose this country, where else will we go that provides more freedom and opportunity for our kids and our grandkids? And I've got 3 grandkids, and I'm counting on a whole lot more. And yes, democracy can be messy, but there is a great invisible strength to a people's union. We have shown the world that we can endure sacrifice and that we can still unite. We should still aspire to be worthy of this union, America. President Donald J. Trump is the leader we need for such a time as this. So now, I need you to get to work. Get out there, go do it. Don't quit. Keep fighting, keep uniting, keep talking to people, win the hearts and minds, and may God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great United States of America. Thank you.
Donald Trump's surprise visit to a construction.
Governor Kristi Noem of North Dakota, who at one point was seen as one of the front runners to become a vice presidential pick until that disastrous new book that she had out, which she talked about killing her dog, delivering a speech tonight that was very complimentary of Donald Trump and well received by the crowd here. I want to take this moment before we hear from another speaker just to get an update, because there have been some new developments, Robert Costa, in the investigation into that attempted assassination attempt of Donald Trump. CBS News learning some new details today.
Indeed, Nora. CBS News has learned that the Secret Service did not sweep the building the shooter used to fire at former President Donald Trump. We're also learning that there is no motive yet established for the shooter of the former president. But right now they're trying to investigate more information. They have accessed at the FBI the shooter's phone, but they have not been able to get any sort of usable information from that device. There's also an intriguing new video that's raising concerns that shows people pointing at that building where the shooter was on top of it on the roof 2 minutes before the shooting took place, pointing at the shooter on top of it. We have also learned at CBS News that the shooter bought ammo on the day of the shooting, and the county sheriff says securing the building was not part of the planning. But right now, people here at the convention, allies of former President Trump, saying that's no excuse. They're still calling for congressional investigations and more probes.
There will be a number of investigations, not only the congressional investigation, but President Biden announcing from the Oval Office last night this independent investigation that the head of the Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, saying today there will be such an investigation into all of this. And those key questions: why wasn't that shed, that building that was not far away from the main stage, why wasn't that secured? Certainly since the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, it has been standard operating procedures. I've been told that the Secret Service will look at these types of buildings. It is difficult in an outdoor arena to secure everything. That's why those snipers are there, and they certainly reacted quickly. But lots of questions about how that gunman got there. And Charlie DeMar has been on the scene doing a lot of the reporting there about this particular thing. Charlie, are you there?
Yeah, no, we are here, and we have learned that the Secret Service did not sweep the building that shooter was perched up upon, but sources also telling us that there was a team of snipers, law enforcement snipers, actually in the same building below that shooter. Now, the FBI, as Rob just reported moments ago, they have gained access into the shooter's phone, and of course, right now, they're trying to glean anything from it that could lead to a possible motive, what the ideologies of this shooter were. The FBI says that they've conducted nearly 100 interviews at this point with everyone from the law enforcement that was on duty, of course, trying to answer those big questions of how this happened, who was supposed to be where and when. Also, the attendees that were here, event staff, any other witnesses. And with so many people who were at this rally, you can imagine how much digital evidence that there is. So investigators are going through all of that right now. And some source information that CBS has also confirmed throughout the day is that the shooter visited a local gun range days before the shooting and actually purchased ammo the morning of the shooting. As for the county fairgrounds where we are right now. This is still an active scene. You can see police cars are still here. We've seen the FBI out here throughout much of the day, combing through the large fairgrounds here. We've seen them looking for bullets and other evidence. So this investigation is far from over, Nora.
Charlie DeMar with those additional details on this investigation. Charlie, thank you so much for being there for us. I want to bring in John Dickerson as well. And John, already so much has changed with this convention. As you have heard, many of the speakers have rewritten their speeches in order to take out what has been some of the more inflammatory rhetoric. Robert just reporting that Senator Ron Johnson read the wrong speech where he talked about Democrats being a clear and present danger. But how much do you think changes?
Well, I hate to be a downer, but I don't think a great deal changes for this reason, Nora. The structure of politics is built largely on what's called negative partisanship, which is that it's very easy to motivate people on their concerns and fears about the other side. And you heard Governor Kristi Noem there talking about losing America if Donald Trump doesn't win. Now that's not incendiary. That's totally within the bounds of political rhetoric. But it is apocalyptic, and it is it's a way you raise money. It's a way you get attention. It's a way you turn people out. That's part of the structure of politics. That does not encourage lots of talk about seeing things from the other side's perspective. No one gets a fundraising email that says, you know, Joe Biden had a good point. So that structure of politics really forces and pushes against some of this talk of unity. And also, we've heard unity before. Actually performing unifying acts is very difficult. I mean, it's hard. You have to give something up. Sometimes what's called unity is essentially asking someone to accede to your point of view. So it's unity if you agree with me, and that's not really unity. That's really just asking somebody to come into your opinion. So those are some of the complexities that are going to be hurdles for somebody for this talk of unity.
John Dickerson, thank you. And want to listen in now to Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida. You may remember that during the January 2023 House Speaker vote, Donalds was nominated for the speakership in the 4th through 11th rounds of voting. Then in October 2023, he was a candidate again, growing in popularity here in the Republican Party and certainly back in Washington, too. Let's listen in.
Let me get to the speech now. Thank you. I'm Byron Donalds, and I come from the great state of Florida. And I proudly represent the people of Southwest Florida. But I was raised by a single mother in Brooklyn, New York. Life was hard, and we struggled. When I was in the 1st grade, my mother took me out of public school because she could see that public education was failing me. I needed to be challenged, and I needed the opportunity that only a private school could provide. My mother is an educator, and she truly believed in my potential. But Democrat politicians wanted to trap me in a failing school, but my mom fought for me. Mom, I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you, Mom. Words cannot describe how deeply grateful I am to be your son. When I was in the 7th grade, my mom lost her job. We went on government assistance, and my grandma helped us pay for private school. My mom and my grandma sacrificed to ensure that I could build a successful future through a commitment to academic achievement and hard work. I'm standing here today as a result of their love, good and safe schools, and great teachers. And to the teachers of America who pour your heart and your soul into your students and teach the next generation to love, honor, and serve our great country, we all say thank you. But what about those kids whose parents can't scrape money together for private school? Don't those kids who grew up like I grew up deserve the same chance that I had? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris sent their kids to high-priced private schools. But since they are in the pocket of the far-left teachers' unions, they trap poor kids like me in failing schools with no way out. They say they're pro-choice, but not if you want a choice over what your kids are taught. Donald Trump believes every parent deserves a choice and every child deserves a chance. And in November, when Donald Trump is elected, our nation's 47th president, we will make sure all America's children get that chance. Growing up poor, I know the pain of high food prices, high energy prices, and housing costs. I remember as a kid, my mom yelling at me, "Turn off that light, you don't pay the bill." We know there's a bunch of kids in America today who are hearing that from their parents. The massive inflation created by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris has only made it worse. During my first term in Congress, I served on the Budget Committee and the Small Business Committee. We told Joe Biden that his so-called American Rescue Plan was going to cause inflation. The Biden-Harris administration told us not to worry, but I knew better. I have nearly 2 decades of experience as a financial professional, and the evidence is in. Go to any grocery store, buy eggs, buy beef, buy milk. Even housing prices have skyrocketed. All Americans deserve a shot at the American dream. But under Joe Biden's debilitating economic policies, far many Americans, far too many of them, that dream has slipped away. This shows that we were right, that Joe Biden was wrong, and that you, the American people, are paying the price. As Americans, we've all been struggling. The disastrous results of the Biden-Harris agenda transcend race, religion, or income. But under President Trump, all of this will change. And if there was ever a time in our nation to come together, that time is now. With Trump, our economy will boom again. You will have more money in your pocket again. And your children will have a future again. Together, I know we will make America wealthy again. And together, America, we will make America great again. God bless you, Milwaukee. God bless the United States of America.
Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida. And still ahead, more from night one of the Republican National Convention. Will we see Donald Trump tonight? And we'll hear shortly from Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep cleaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I
had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling. You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening. It's America's most neglected problem. I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
That Desired Farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Welcome back to day one of the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. Let's go now to CBS Morning's co-host Tony DeCopel. And Tony, where are you?
Well, Nora, I don't even know quite where the camera is, but I am sitting in the friends and family section. Forgive me if I don't know where to look. I'd like to get a vantage point from as many different perspectives as I can, and we had some friends of the morning show, some fans of all of us at CBS News, invite me to sit here for a second. It's an interesting place to sit because I'm only about 10 or 15 feet away from the Trump family box, and there's already a significant crowd of photographers and journalists gathering 3, 4, 5 deep in front of that box, because the expectation is that at some point during the evening, we're going to have members of the Trump family. We are not sure what members, but judging by this crowd, the thinking is it's going to be significant. I'll also point out, and this is very Trumpian in its way, that by far the plushest, most comfortable seats in the House are the white easy chairs in that box just next to me. I'll send it back to you guys on that note.
Tony DeCopel with a bird's eye view of, I think, where all eyes will be later tonight, is as there are rumors that we could see former President Donald Trump in his first public appearance since the attempted assassination attempt in that very box alongside his family tonight. So we will stay tuned for that and report any details when we have it. Robert?
That could be such a moment for Republicans here. You think about Ronald Reagan when he was shot as president in 1981 in Washington, D.C. He went to the University of Notre Dame to give the commencement address a few months later after he recovered it, and it was an ovation after ovation. This is a partisan crowd, a crowd that loves former President Trump. For him to come out tonight after that assassination attempt, really paying close attention to the reaction tonight here in the hall.
Nora, we would obviously await confirmation, but I know from the planning of this that Donald Trump was intending to be present all 4 nights of this convention before the terrifying and traumatic events of Saturday in Butler, Pennsylvania. Why would he not show up here tonight? He knows what effect it would have. It would be deservedly, legitimately, a cinematic moment for this crowd, for him, for this crowd to show their adulation of him and to show his appreciation of them and to remind the country this convention is going exactly as scheduled. No alteration, which is something he said on Sunday was important to him, important to the delegates, and important for the country to see. I don't want to say with absolute certainty the former president would be here until we have confirmation, but I can't imagine a scenario in which he would not.
That's right, and Donald Trump did give an interview to two newspapers while he was on his plane out here, where he talked about how he's doing, that he didn't want, of course, the schedule to change at all, given what has happened.
I just spoke to one of the journalists who interviewed former President Trump, and he said, and this is what I've been hearing from so many people who've spoken to him behind the scenes, he keeps recounting what it's like to hear a bullet come this close to potentially killing you. And they say he's been contemplative, thoughtful, musing about what it means in the sense of his own life.
Talking about turning his head at the last minute.
So he was going to look at his screen about immigration statistics, and he ended up tilting his head. We've covered so many Trump rallies, he's usually looking straight ahead. But he said, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be dead. That was in an interview with the New York Post after the Butler rally. And he's been making call after call. You've been speaking with former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. He's been talking about his conversation with doctors and medical professionals. For the Trump family, and Donald Trump Jr. has been saying this to CBS News today, this is a political moment, but also a deeply personal one.
And for President Reagan, Robert Costa referred to that. It took a while, but he really came to believe surviving that attempted assassination meant there was some larger purpose for him that was transcendent, larger than politics, larger than the Republican Party. And it wasn't an immediate revelation, quote unquote, for President Reagan, but it came to him over time. That happens in real life. In moments like this, when you're in the arena and something so dreadful barely passes you by.
And that is something that I've been hearing over and over again from delegates in the hallways and just people on the street coming to observe this week's events. And I noticed out in the hallway, there's a banner. We've all been to so many Trump rallies, but especially the line that he gives is, they're coming after me because they're coming after you, and I'm the one standing in their way. And so many that I've talked to here have noted that image of Trump and take it as he literally took a bullet for us, is kind of how they are seeing this moment, and that image is pressed in their minds, and of course is pressed in all of our minds going forward.
It creates a connection with your supporters that's unlike any other. Let's talk now about some of the polling data for this year's election, because the two candidates have been neck and neck in the national polls and those in the key battleground states, which we're really watching most closely. So to take a closer look, let's bring in CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, so good to see you. And what does the Republican Party look like today?
Hey, Nora, let's talk about that connection between the party and Donald Trump. But first, you mentioned correctly that this race was neck and neck for a while, but it has been moving toward Donald Trump. You heard folks earlier talk about leads. Yes, he has one. He has a lead, albeit a narrow one, in the battlegrounds. And in fact, in our CBS estimates, he has a slight lead in every single battleground state. What does that mean? Well, one of the things it means is that these Republicans are excited to have him as the nominee, and even more so than they were back in 2016. A presidency, strong polling later, you see big numbers saying they're excited. But there's this other dynamic, Nora, and that is the fact that these Republicans, many of them see themselves as part of a movement, as part of the MAGA movement, and that has meant more than just voting. It's meant they want the party to be loyal to Donald Trump. We test that word. And look at these numbers. 86% of self-identified MAGA Republicans say that's very important, and that's much higher than the rest of the party. Well, what does that loyalty entail? One of the things, frankly, is that it means buying what Donald Trump has talked about with regard to the 2020 election. This is a crowd of folks who feel that something's been taken from them. They overwhelmingly, among Republicans and even more so among MAGA, say that Joe Biden did not legitimately win in 2020, and that underpins a lot of that support and a lot of the reasons that they currently think that Donald Trump is being pressured or being unfairly prosecuted throughout this last couple of years, Nora.
And what about J.D. Vance? How do you think that plays in this election?
Well, let me show you this, because it's really important back to that MAGA idea. We tested, before they were picked, some of the possible names, and J.D. Vance, for those who knew him within the Republican Party, was by 4-1 going to be a satisfactory choice. Now, this not sure number, that's going to change in a hurry, right? But there's this other dynamic here with regard to MAGA. The MAGA folks were even more saying in advance that they would be enthusiastic or satisfied with J.D. Vance. He gets that MAGA backing, and as I showed you, that's a really important part. That's the dynamic and controlling part of the Republican Party right now, and that's before he's even started talking to the convention, Nora.
All right, Anthony, thank you. And I think Robert has a question for you.
Anthony, what's your candid take on whether Senator Vance actually helps the Trump campaign? What's your take on whether Senator Vance actually helps the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan? You study those states. Is this really going to change the race in those respective states or not?
Well, one thing is Donald Trump won 2/3 of white working class voters in 2020. J.D. Vance won them in Ohio in a Senate election, and I'm sure they think he can go out and appeal to that critical voting bloc in places like Michigan, in places like Wisconsin, which if they win, they sort of all but assure Donald Trump's chances. That's number one. And number two, this appears to be a turnout election. So back to this idea of the base, of MAGA. If it's somebody that helps motivate turnout where Republicans and Donald Trump already have an advantage, then that's a double effect that could help.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you so much. You know, Anthony makes such a great point about a turnout election. You know, and here you have an excited Republican Party, and Democrats are in the doldrums.
Democrats are in the doldrums. Up until Saturday afternoon, before the attempted assassination attempt, the Democrats were going into their third week of a convulsive intra-party conversation about how well President Biden could campaign. Should he remain the party's nominee? Many Democrats I've talked to in the aftermath of the events on Saturday say that is going to peter out, that they're no longer going to be worrying about that Biden will be the nominee. But it was a tough stretch for Democrats coming up right on this convention, which will be an amplification of the Trump agenda.
Let's listen in now to Vanessa Fora. She's of North Carolina, and the RNC is calling her an everyday American that has been harmed by the current economy, having trouble paying for groceries. Let's listen to Vanessa Fora.
Painted building. Both my parents worked 2 jobs. At 18, I achieved one of my greatest aspirations. I became a United States citizen. I asked my father which party I should join. He said that we're Hispanics, we vote Democrat. But the more I learned, the more I saw that the Democratic Party didn't represent my values. Republicans did. I believe that the most important institution is the family, that the U.S. Constitution is the greatest document in history, and that every human being, born and unborn, is made in the image of God. Today, I'm proud to be part of an organization that protects the freedoms and opportunities of women across America. I've had the honor of meeting thousands of moms. Since Biden took office, I've heard one message from mothers from all backgrounds. The cost of living is making it harder to meet basic needs. Moms are reaching down the bottom shelf to just save 35 cents. Grandmothers who should be enjoying their golden years are working again to barely make ends meet. Under the Biden-Harris agenda, we're no longer living, we're surviving. It feels more and more like I'm back in Latin America. Under President Trump, Hispanics' unemployment reached record lows, and our income reached a record high. To my fellow Hispanic Americans and to all Americans, if you believe in faith, family, freedom, financial stability, join me in voting for Donald Trump this November. Thank you, America.
Ladies and gentlemen. And that was Vanessa Fora of North Carolina. Republicans, you can see, are talking a lot about the economy tonight, as both campaigns are trying to draw a contrast between what the economy would look like under Trump, what it looked like under Trump, and what it looks like today under President Biden. According to CBS News' price tracker, since 2019, the cost of a dozen eggs has increased 126%, and a half a gallon of milk is now nearly $4. That is a 30% increase. So there is some sticker shock, but inflation has actually started to come down. To discuss this topic and its impact, let's bring in Nancy Cordes and Major Garrett. Glad to have both of you here. But first, Nancy, let me talk to you first about President Biden today, who gave an interview, talk about the state of his campaign, the new vice presidential pick for Donald Trump. What did he say?
Well, when it comes to J.D. Vance, Nora, reporters were able to snag him for just a moment before he boarded Air Force One on his way to Las Vegas, Nevada. He said essentially that J.D. Vance is no different than Donald Trump. He said that they are the same. They are clones of one another, in his words. And so he doesn't see much of a difference, trying to tie them together when it comes to their policies. In that interview that you mentioned that went on for about 20 minutes or so, it was interesting. He was asked about his rhetoric. You know, the president has been saying for several days now, since this assassination attempt, that the U.S. needs to bring down the temperature and that everyone should condemn political violence. And so he was asked about some of his own rhetoric, and in particular, a phrase that he likes to use out on the campaign trail, that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. He was asked if he thinks that that is appropriate, and he actually argued that he thinks it is. He said, if you think someone is a threat to democracy, what else are you going to say? And he went on to argue that Trump's rhetoric has been far more extreme than his has, and he noted how the former president made fun of Nancy Pelosi and her husband Paul Pelosi when Paul was attacked with a hammer inside their home by a man who reportedly was there to kill Nancy Pelosi, the former speaker.
And Nancy, what is President Biden's campaign saying about how Donald Trump's policies would affect the middle class, the working class?
Well, they're arguing first and foremost that he wants to roll back taxes for the wealthy and for corporations, while President Biden, they insist, is much more focused on the working class, on middle class Americans. And they're making the case that President Biden's policies have been good for the middle class. They point to the fact that wages are going up, that unemployment has been below 4% for the past couple of years, and that inflation has come down from a peak of 9% down to where it currently stands at about 3%. The problem is, Nora, that as you pointed out, that sticker shock exists because even though inflation is down, Americans have seen their prices go up for everyday goods by about 20% since the pandemic, since President Biden took office. It's the same around the world, but it's cold comfort to people here who are paying more for just about everything. And that is the big challenge for the Biden campaign. How do they convince Americans that they're better off than they would have been under someone else when people are still paying so much more for the things they need to buy every day?
And Nancy, I do want to ask you about your questions to the head of the Department of Homeland Security today. You asked about the Secret Service and whether it's spread too thin. How did he respond?
Nora, he said that the Secret Service works with other partners, state partners, local law enforcement, to ensure that they have the resources that they need. But at the same time, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary said that he was going to be speaking to Congress about the necessary resources. So that seemed to be an indication that he believed that he could have more when it comes to the Secret Service than he has right now.
This November. Nancy Cordes, stand by. We have some new reporting. We can report that the former president, Donald J. Trump, is in the building here. So as we have been talking about tonight, we are expected to see him as the former president will make his first public appearance here in front of tens of thousands of supporters on day one of the Republican convention. It will likely be an electric moment here. It comes just as many of the networks will go on the air in the 10 o'clock hour to cover this convention. So well scripted and planned to do that at this hour.
It is not in any way, Nora, an insult to say of Donald Trump he has an exquisite sense of cinematic and television moments. He does. It is part of his resume that brought him into grand knowledge in this country as a figure, not expected to be a political figure, but a celebrity figure. And it's important to understand in American politics, particularly in our modern telecommunications society, that moments like that can be valuable and can last. And Donald Trump has repetitively displayed a sense of timing, suspense, and appearance. And that's what's going to happen tonight.
And resilience is part of the American character, whether it's former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords or the current leader, majority leader of the House of Representatives, Steve Scalise of Louisiana, a Republican. When violence happens, especially at a political level in this country still has wounds from John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963, his brother Robert F. Kennedy in 1968. Of course, we all think not a presidential figure, but a major figure in American history, Dr. Martin Luther King, in April 1968. These wounds still tear at the American psyche, the American character. And so whether it's former President Trump tonight or a Democrat who's been gunned at a political event, to see the resilience is something that goes beyond partisan lines. And it will lift people here in this room to see someone of that stature carry on. And I think any American can applaud that kind of moment of carrying on in the political fight, as President Biden said in his speech to the country, and as so many Republicans have said here today to CBS News, let people at the ballot box decide what happens in the American political system, not violence, not a gunman.
And so much of addressing those wounds is appearing in public. We have seen photos and videos of Donald Trump. We have not seen him in public. So it means a lot to these people behind here who are literally the delegates giving him the nomination, but also for the general public to see movement, to see him in a public space again, in a secure space, and kind of give that kind of sense of calm in a way as well.
One of the most secure places to be right here tonight at the Republican National Convention, where there are multiple layers of security just to get even near this place. Let's listen in now, because Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn is speaking, and she's fresh off serving as the chair for the RNC's official party platform. Let's listen up.
Businessman from White Bluff, Tennessee. Brad leads Bordeaux Metals. By the end of the Obama-Biden administration, high taxes, massive government spending, and overregulation almost put him out of business. But things changed when we elected Donald Trump. Thanks to President Trump's tax and regulation cuts, Brad and those that worked for him prospered. He hired new workers, expanded the business. Life was good and getting better. But Bidenomics was a four-letter word for Bordeaux Metals. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, their high inflation, high interest, high taxes, and Green New scam are destroying small businesses. Biden and Harris outsourced our energy supply, driving electricity prices up over 29%. The day Joe and Kamala walked into office, gas was $2.40 a gallon. Today, it is $3.54. Our platform says we will make America energy dominant. You know? And let me hear you now. You know who will make that happen? Donald Trump. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris also think that small business owners are wealthy and they should pay their fair share. We all know that's the left-wing code for you gotta pay more taxes. Well, in Tennessee, I led the fight against a proposed state income tax. We killed that thing. We are income tax free in Tennessee. So when Donald Trump was president, I helped him spread economic prosperity with the largest tax cut in American history. Now, President Trump will make those tax cuts permanent. But if Joe and Kamala are reelected, they say they're going to let them expire. That will be the biggest tax increase in American history. Our party's platform commits to making the Trump tax cuts permanent. And you know who will return us to an era of prosperity? Donald Trump. Now, Joe and Kamala, bless their hearts, they couldn't help themselves. They hired 85,000 new IRS agents to harass hard-working Americans. IRS penalties have surged 300%. And they're not on big corporations. They're on gig workers, freelancers, small business owners, and the self-employed. Let me ask you a question. Who is going to look at those 85,000 IRS agents and say, "You're fired"? Donald Trump. Under Biden and Harris, people are also crushed by more regulations than at any time since Jimmy Carter. Their regulations aren't just burdensome. Often, they include racist DEI requirements. Many small businesses are going bankrupt. Some are throwing up their hands in disgust. Our party's platform pledges 7 times to cut regulations that are killing jobs and costing you thousands of dollars. Now, you know who will slash that red tape and return this country to economic greatness? Donald Trump. The harmful Biden-Harris policies are why so many small business owners, like Shayna Gray, she is a black female owner of Great Jet Cafe right here in Milwaukee. She voted for Biden in 2020, and in 24, she is voting for President Donald Trump. Our platform is a promise to people like Shayna, people like Brad, and President Trump will keep his promises just like he did the first time. So I've got one more question for you. Who should be the next President of the United States? Donald Trump. God bless you, protect you, and God bless and protect
And there's Senator Blackburn. I just want to point out that the pictures you're seeing right now are Senator J.D. Vance. He is in the VIP box right now, greeting other senators, including Senator Katie Britt, also a young Republican senator from the state of Alabama. That is where we could see Donald J. Trump, the former president of the United States, shortly. He is in the building. Want to talk about one of those battleground states of Pennsylvania, of course, where that attempted assassination took place, where Joe Biden is from. Let's bring in KDKA TV politics editor John Delano. John, so good to talk to you because you know so much about the state of Pennsylvania. Where do you see things right now?
Well, first, Nora, great to be with you and that awesome political team you have around you. You know, there's no question that Pennsylvania is a battleground state. All the polling I've seen shows Donald Trump ahead by 1 to 4 points within margin of error. So this state is still very much up for grabs. Unclear exactly what the assassination attempt right up the road here from us means politically. We'll know more about that later. But there's no doubt that there's a bit of embarrassment here in Western Pennsylvania that this even occurred, even if the fault still is unknown with respect to the Secret Service. A lot of folks here in Western Pennsylvania really not only the attack on the former president, but the loss of one of our Pennsylvanians and the injuries to 2 others. Really a sad occasion here.
And John, I wonder, J.D. Vance, of course, representing Ohio right next door to Pennsylvania, what impact do you think that might have?
I really think, Nora, that's unclear. You know, Ohio is about 30 miles behind me here. We are right next to that state. I don't think Senator Vance is particularly well known, although those who follow the hillbilly elegy may know a little more about him. He seems very much to be part of the MAGA crowd, which is to say some people say he's a mini Trump. His policies, his positions are really no different than the former president. So I'm not sure that he brings that much except geography, and that's always important in these elections.
KDKA TV's political editor John Delano. John Delano, thank you so much. Always great to have your reporting and perspective. And we're looking now at the Republican Party's vice presidential pick, the senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, greeting there the Speaker of the House, members of the Trump family, and we're expecting to see the former president shortly. We'll be right back.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt.
This is a CBS News special, America Decides, the Republican National Convention. Now reporting, Norah O'Donnell.
Good evening and welcome to America Decides Campaign 2024 and CBS News coverage of the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin right now. That's right. You see the former president, Donald Trump, in his first public appearance. You can see the bandage on his ear. Let's listen in. You will hear this crowd go electric.
Because he was sure, as Donald Trump turned his head just slightly, that the bullet missed him just enough to save his life to be the next president of the United States.
For this song,
we have believed for so long that God will make some changes in this country, and he's about to make a change in the current administration and send them home. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. Tonight we make the decision on what's right for America. More prosperity, less gas prices, less food prices, help for our veterans, and God bless our military wherever they are in these United States and abroad. There would be no wars.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again. Just my children.
and there it is, remarkable to see the 45th president of the United States walking on the floor of the convention. You can see that his right ear bandaged after being grazed by a bullet just 48 hours ago. You can hear now many of the delegates and attendees here are singing along with this song. There you see the president being greeted by close supporters, including Tucker Carlson and his family in the VIP family box there. Many of his family were instrumental in pushing Senator J.D. Vance to be the vice presidential pick. And that's our first shot of the two of them together. Lee Greenwood just saying, "You will not take this man down." Robert Costa.
A moment where former President Trump is visibly showing some emotion. This is someone who so often is projecting political confidence. The last time I've seen this kind of expression, I've covered him for a long time, was on election night 2016, when he seemed to be stunned by victory, now taken aback clearly by the reception here at the Republican National Convention, opening night. A former president recovering from an assassination attempt. The crowd on its feet cheering former President Trump. There with his running mate, just 39 years old, J.D. Vance, presenting a generational contrast. This has echoes of other moments in American history. 1981, when President Ronald Reagan shot and came to crowds months after recovering. But this is beyond parties. We've seen Democrats like Gabrielle Giffords, Republicans like President Reagan shot. Resilience is a part of the American character, whether you are Republican or Democrat, carrying on. Tonight, former President Trump does just that. Day one of a convention, back to politics, but also a human moment as well.
And such such a critical one for the country to see the former president having just survived an assassination attempt in a public setting. There's lots of security here, of course, the highest security levels you can have in the country right here. But seeing him in public around people is significant for the country to see.
And Nora, it's worth pointing out, and I think Robert made an excellent point about the look on former President Trump's face.
He looks emotional.
Softer, more emotional, less aggressive than he typically does in face of a partisan crowd. That, I think, is being absorbed by this crowd and the nation writ large.
John Dickerson, your thoughts?
Well, you all have covered this extraordinary and dramatic moment. I would just note one other comeback by the former president. There was a time after the riots of January 6th where the Republican leaders in the House and the Senate blamed him for lying to the country and leading to that attempt to disenfranchise 81 million people. After that, there was a period where many people thought that's the end of Donald Trump and in the Republican Party. Glenn Youngkin, governor of Virginia, who spoke so fulsomely about Donald Trump tonight, ran away from Trump when he ran for governor in Virginia. Then in 2022, when Trump's candidates didn't do very well, people thought, well, that's really the end of it for Donald Trump. Before the tragic events of Saturday, it was already an extraordinary story that Donald Trump, who had been vilified by the leaders of the Senate and House in his own party, came to a convention that is as unified as anybody can think of in modern memory. That was the comeback that existed before this physical and emotional one we're seeing right now.
Chance now, we love Trump. And there was also chance of fight. Remember, that is what former President Trump yelled as he left the rally stage in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday. Now they're taking his seat. He was raising his fist in the air just as he did on Saturday after that assassination attempt.
This was also a crowd that is moved as well, many of them holding up their phones, taking pictures, some of them emotional, seeing Donald Trump for the first time as well with his bandaged ear. I want to check in with Tony DeCopel, who is on the floor of this convention. Tony?
Nora, I am in the Friends and Family section. The vantage point I have is of about 5 seats in from the Trump box. I can see the former president and the Speaker of the House and J.D. Vance and the future of the Republican Party there, as well as what they hope will be the next president of the United States. I watched his approach, and sitting right next to me is Brenda here. Brenda's from California, San Diego, and there are tears in your eyes right now. Tell me what you're thinking.
I'm speechless. I'm looking at a man who has sacrificed so much, been through so much, been scrutinized, drugged through the mud for this country, and all of these people are here for him. And the fact that he's here is just, I find it overwhelming and touching that he's not hiding, he's not scared, he is ready to defend our country and take it back. I'm just so honored to be here and to be in the presence of all of this, and normally I keep it together.
It's okay. I think this is the intended effect, and you're not the only one I've noticed with tears in her eyes. And Nora, folks up there in the box, there was a lot of excitement. The phones came out of the pockets in this area of the arena. But there was a lot of somber reflection as well. You could see the cheers, you could see the shouts, the applause, but also the sense that it could have been otherwise. And that's why you see the crying here, the emotion from Brenda, and why you have a sense of significance that has entered the room that might not have been here otherwise. And in fact, we know for certain that typically a candidate does not appear on the first night of their party's convention. But here we go. Everything changed on Saturday, and we are seeing that change in the Trump family box with the former president himself right at this moment.
Tony, thank you very much.
There's a specialness to this moment, obviously, for the Trump family, people who know the former president very well, but also for the American democratic system. When President Biden addressed the nation from the Oval Office just the other day, he said American voters should make the final decision on who wins the White House. The ballot box is where decisions are made, not by those who use weapons and political violence. And you see tonight in day one at the Republican National Convention, a country, a party moving forward in the wake of this wound of an assassination attempt. And that's something that is moving people here inside the arena in Milwaukee, perhaps across the country.
And Nora, Tony's interview with Brenda from my hometown of San Diego exemplifies something, which is important to understand about Trump's relationship to the Republican Party and the Republican Party's relationship to Donald Trump. Many Republicans like Brenda believe that former President Trump has been overly scrutinized, has been hounded, has been vilified. Whether that's true or not, that's what they feel personally. And they believe he has gone through this not only to be a political actor, but on their behalf. And they feel a connection to him that transcends ideology, party labels, or anything, and this is my conversation over and over and over with Trump supporters, than they ever felt for any other political candidate in their lifetimes. Brenda's tears are a reflection of that emotional connection that is more than political. And in this moment, it is highly visible and totally genuine.
Let's check in now with Ed O'Keefe, who is also on the floor of this convention. Ed?
Nora, I'm with delegates from Pennsylvania who were at the rally on Saturday when the former president was shot at and dodged that bullet. State Representative Leslie Rossi, thank you for spending a moment with you. I watched you make the sign of the cross as he entered the room and stood up there.
Because it's a miracle. I mean, God has his hands over Trump, and I am so emotional just to see him here with us this evening. When he went down, there was a calm over the crowd. You would think in such a situation like that, you would see chaos and screaming, and that wasn't the case at all. I was right there. I was right near the stands where individuals were shot, and they were bleeding, and their Dr. Sweetland was administering aid, and we were looking at our president on the ground, and we didn't know his situation or whether he was alive or dead or what. And when he stood up, I couldn't hear what he said, but I just saw that fist and I said, that's my president. He's a fighter. He is doing this for us, and we just really respect and admire all that he's gone through. It's tremendous, and it's not how it should be.
No, we shouldn't have violence at our political rallies at all.
Not
absolutely.
on any level, because you know what? My mom's a Democrat. I don't even think she votes for me. But she's a Roosevelt Democrat. She's 97, but we live in the same household. And so we get along and we function. And so in my office, I help Democrats every day. They respect me. I respect them. We work together. And that's where this country has to get back to.
You told me you were there for so long before the former president took the stage that you have photos of the crowd, and you realized that you have photos of the man who was killed.
I do.
And you'd seen him before it happened.
I had seen people up in that section. I more so noticed Dr. Sweetland because he had a white shirt on that said USA, and he was.
That was the emergency room doctor who helped.
I didn't know that at the time, but he was in the middle of the stands, and he was waving and smiling, and he was with another gentleman who had a white beard, and they both had white shirts on. So they stood out to me. You're sitting there for 4 hours in the hot sun. So obviously I did notice them, and then when we heard the pop, 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 pop. It wasn't very long after that I saw him go.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play.
From God. I just believe God has his hand on him.
Tom King from Butler County as well. You were there as well. You saw, you were at the event, right?
Yes, I was. I had the pleasure to meet with the president about 10 minutes before he was shot. It was a terrible day. I'm from Butler County, Pennsylvania. It was a terrible day in Butler. Evil came to Butler County. My prayers go out to the family of Corey Comparatori, who was lost, and the other victims there. It was a terrible day, and what otherwise started out as a wonderful rally for the president to support him. We were gravely concerned that the president, whether the president was going to survive. The crowd was frozen, waiting to see if he was going to survive, and when he did, it was a blessing.
Quickly, I'm curious, 2 days or so since that happened, how should the Republican Party conduct itself now from this week into November if it wants to win the White House back?
I think the party has to be a big party. It has to be a big umbrella. The Republicans stand for lots of people, little people, all across the United States. And the party has to coalesce around Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. We have a wonderful ticket. They stand for things that are right in America. We have to get America right again, and that means retiring Joe Biden.
Nora, as we toss back to you, one of the things we'd heard a lot about from delegates is the resolve to win in November after what happened on Saturday, to take the resolve that the former president, they believe, demonstrated in the moments right after the bullet grazed him and turn that into a victory this November. We've seen laughter, dancing, clapping, joy on the floors of conventions for years. I'd not seen tears, signs of the cross, and sort of stunned amazement at the presence of the former president tonight as he was here. Nora, back to you.
Ed O'Key with those revealing interviews from delegates who were at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Ed, thank you so much, and so interesting to hear from them, and certainly about this now even more emotional connection that they have with Donald Trump. Want to just point out that speaking right now is Amber Rose, who is probably most well known for dating Kanye West and is a media personality. It's an unusual choice to speak here at the Republican convention on a night like this. We're saluting and seeing Donald Trump for the very first time. We have not seen the former First Lady, Melania Trump, tonight, or Ivanka Trump. It's not clear whether they are here. We just have not seen them in the booth. But Donald Trump tonight appearing emotional in many ways, and as he makes his first public appearance since the assassination attempt. Let's listen in just for a moment to Amber Rose.
And I believe the left-wing propaganda that Donald Trump was a racist. My father said, "No, he's not, Amber. What are you talking about?" And when I insisted, he said, "Prove it." So to prove my father wrong, I did my research and looked into all things Donald Trump. People have to do their research. I watched all the rallies, and I started meeting so many of you, his red hat wearing supporters.
Joining us now is the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. Governor, good to see you.
Nora, thank you so much for having me with you. What an exciting night. How about when President Trump came in? This place just erupted.
I know. What did you see? What did you feel? You were down there with the delegates?
Yeah, so first of all, the whole day has been filled with anticipation and excitement, and it represents this moment of, yes, unity. Unity for the party, unity for the nation. And you can feel the spirit of hope literally spreading across not just this huge arena, but across the country. And that's what it feels like. And you could see everyone standing up and cheering. How exciting that he's here tonight, and how exciting it is for everybody to be able to tell him that they're so thankful that he's safe and that he will lead our nation.
How have you been able to speak with him personally yet?
Yeah, I spoke with him yesterday. And I first told him that Providence is real, and that he was a millimeter away from a very different outcome, and he knows that. And he acknowledged that he was going to speak about unity, and this is a moment to bring the whole nation together. And then he encouraged me, rewrite your speech too.
He did.
And so this is a real statement about a moment in America where we get to reflect on where we are and where we want to be, And we don't want to be where Joe Biden's had us. We don't want to be in a moment of weakness, of foreign policy weakness or economic weakness with chaos at the border. We know that we can bring common sense back to America. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as our vice president will do exactly that. There will be economic strength. There will be foreign policy strength. We'll have a secure border, and America will be strong again.
How well do you know Senator J.D. Vance?
Not well at all. Not well at all. I'm very excited about his choice today in J.D. Vance from the president. I think he will be a tremendous running mate, and he'll be a great vice president. I mean, let's be serious. He fought for our country. He understands what it means to be pulled up by your bootstraps, and he fights for prosperity. He's going to be a great running mate for the president.
You're from the state of Virginia, the great Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you.
And before the last couple of weeks, we looked at the polls. It's not a battleground. It has been a purple state in years past. How do you see it moving in recent weeks?
Well, of course, what we've seen even before the debate was that Virginia was locked up tied.
For the Democrats. Locked
up tied. Locked up tied between President Trump and Joe Biden. And that was before the debate. And of course, what that reflects, I believe, is the same sentiment that when we were fortunate to win in 2021, the idea that Virginians want an economic future that's bright and strong, and they want to make sure that their children can go to schools that teach their children how to think, not what to think, that we back the blue, that we stand for our military. I mean, this is the America that Virginians want, and that's why I think that the weak leadership from Joe Biden is being reflected in strength with Donald Trump in the polls, and Virginia's in play.
Mm-hmm. Major Garrett is with us as well.
Governor Youngkin, you mentioned a moment ago that what happened on Saturday was, from your vantage point, a providential moment.
I do.
I know many delegates that I've spoken to believe exactly the same thing. Thomas Jefferson talked about the separation of church and state. Articulate for the country, as best you can, providential moment, but also maintaining that separation of church and state.
Well, first of all, I am led by my faith. And Suzanne, when I asked her to marry me, said yes, but our faith has to be at the center of our marriage. That's the way that we live our lives. And as I serve as governor, I don't check my faith at the door. It comes into every decision with me. It's part of who I am. I do believe that's one of the reasons why Virginians trust me, is they understand the basis by which I'm going to be making decisions, which is something bigger than myself. And I believe that there is not a message by separation of church and state that we are to be unimpacted by our strong belief that there is an almighty creator who endowed us with certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is America. And in fact, faith and God are infused into our national soul. What it does mean is that we don't force people to practice a certain religious belief. In fact, we protect it. We protect it in our First Amendment that you can practice your own religious belief the way you want to. That's America.
Governor,
and I think that's why it's so important for us to remind ourselves of that every day.
Governor, can I ask you, as someone who has had a successful career in business, you want Virginia to be the place where everybody comes to do business. There have been a wide number of economists who've said that Donald Trump's decision to place tariffs on so many goods will actually be a tax on middle-class Americans. Can you respond to that?
Let me just first begin that Virginia last week was named America's best place for business, and so I'm very honored and was very excited about that. Virginia's doing great. We've had record job growth and $74 billion of capital commitments from companies, and I think that's reflective of the hard work that we're doing. Listen, economists project lots of things, and I believe that
tariffs will raise the price of goods, and that will affect consumers.
I believe that what President Trump is doing is staking out a very strong position that free and fair trade must be reciprocal, and that in fact we will make sure that we have free and fair trade as a country. And let's just pick one country, China. China is not a rival. China is trying to dominate the world, and they're trying to do it at the expense of the United States. And for too long, we allowed them to have open access to the U.S. market without any kind of counterbalance from America. And when President Trump struck the China trade deal and imposed substantial tariffs on them, it was a critically important statement that we're going to stand up for free and fair trade. I believe that's what he is going to stand up for in his next presidency, is that we will have free, fair, and reciprocal trade, but it has to be that. It's not just sell your goods in the United States and do not worry about what we do to your goods when they come overseas.
Well, thank you for answering that question. There's no doubt there will be a continued debate about the economic policies of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, what tariffs mean. I think the American people would love to have a debate about the issues, which we haven't really had yet. There's been so much going on. Governor Youngkin, congratulations to the state of Virginia.
Thank you.
On that new recognition.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being with here.
Great to be with you. Thank you all very, very much.
And speaking next is Sean O'Brien, president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, an influential labor union. And that is the first time a Teamsters president has addressed the RNC. The Teamsters have yet to endorse Trump or President Biden in this year's election. So let's check in with Ed O'Keefe. And Ed, why is Sean O'Brien going to be the keynote speaker?
Because it's not every day that the leader of a major labor union addresses a Republican National Convention. In fact, in the case of the Teamsters, it's never happened before. But Sean O'Brien will be here tonight as the union considers its first ever Republican presidential nomination, or at least its first in several years. They've made five-figure donations to both parties this year because there are members who believe that the union should consider endorsing Donald Trump after their concerns with the economic policies of President Biden, and yet there are many other members of the Teamsters tonight furious that Sean O'Brien will be here. Either way, it's a coup for the Trump campaign as they continue trying to cut into different elements of the Democratic Party's umbrella. Organized labor, black and Latino men, the young, women as well. If Sean O'Brien, as he begins his remarks here, can convince his members to vote Republican and keep battleground states, Trump might win the White House again.
Let's listen in to Sean O'Brien.
I'd like to give my peeps from the greatest state in the nation, Massachusetts, some props. What's up? First, I want to thank the hardworking Teamsters and union members here in Milwaukee who play vital roles in the building and operations of this convention. I also want to thank President Donald Trump for opening the RNC's doors to the Teamsters Union and inviting me to speak before you tonight. I travel all across this country and meet with my members every week. You know what I see? An American worker being taken for granted. Workers being sold out to big banks, big tech, corporates, and the elite. And I'm not the only one who sees this. Everyday families see it. The American people aren't stupid. They know the system is broken. We all know how Washington is run. Working people have no chance of winning this fight. That's why I'm here today, because I refuse to keep doing the same things my predecessors did. Today, the Teamsters are here to say we are not beholden to anyone or any party. We will create an agenda and work with a bipartisan coalition ready to accomplish something real for the American worker. And I don't care about getting criticized. It's an honor to be the first Teamster in our 121-year history to address the Republican National Convention. Several months ago, I asked the RNC and the DNC for the opportunity to speak. To be frank, when President Trump invited me to speak at this convention, there was political unrest on the left and on the right. Hard to believe. Anti-union groups demanded the president rescind his invitation. The left called me a traitor. And this is precisely why it's so important for me to be here today. Think about this. Think about this. The Teamsters are doing something correct if the extremes in both parties think I shouldn't be on this stage. President Trump had the backbone to open the doors to this Republican convention, and that's unprecedented. No other nominee in the race would have invited the Teamsters into this arena. Now, you can have whatever opinion you want, but one thing is clear. President Trump is a candidate who is not afraid of hearing from new, loud, and often critical voices. And I think we all can agree, whether people like him or they don't like him, in light of what happened to him on Saturday, he has proven to be one tough SOB. Now, when I won the presidency of the Teamsters in a national election 2.5 years ago, we started reaching across the aisle. In the past, the Teamsters have endorsed GOP candidates, including Nixon, Reagan, and George H.W. Bush. But over the last 40 years, the Republican Party has really pursued strong relationships with organized labor. There are some in the party who stand in active opposition to labor unions. This, too, must change. And I want to be clear. At the end of the day, the Teamsters are not interested if you have a D, R, or an I next to your name. We want to know one thing. What are you doing to help American workers? As a negotiator, I know that no window or door should ever be permanently shut. In my administration, the Teamsters reached out to 8 Republican senators who stood up for railroad Teamsters over our fight for paid sick leave. Josh Hawley was one of them. We started talking. Senator Hawley changed his position on national right to work. Then we started walking. Senator Hawley walked a Teamsters picket line in St. Louis and a UAW picket line in Wentzville, Missouri. More than that, I want to recognize Senator Hawley for his direct, relentless, and pointed questioning of corporate talking heads, lawyers, CEOs, and apologists. He has shown he is not willing to accept their pillaging of working people's pocketbooks. I know from a career in negotiating that you get nowhere by slamming your fist on the table. The first step is to listen. The Teamsters and the GOP may not agree on many issues, but a growing group has shown the courage to sit down and consider points of view that aren't funded by big money think tanks. Senators like J.D. Vance, Roger Marshall, and Representatives Nicole Malliotakis, Mike Lawler, and Brian Fitzpatrick are among elected officials who truly care about working people. And this group is expanding and is putting fear into those who have monopolized our very broken system in America today. There are far too many people on both sides of the aisle still caught up in knee-jerk reactions to unions, who subscribe to the same tired claptrap that unions destroy American companies. Take a moment to consider United Parcel Service, which is the largest private sector logistics company, and it's been unionized for more than 100 years. More than 350,000 Teamsters make it run. We work for good middle-class wages, quality health care, and secure pensions. There are work rules that ensure fairness and due process for both sides. UPS is the most efficient package delivery company in the world. But let's not forget that UPS doesn't provide these great wages and benefits out of the kindness of its heart. UPS does it because the Teamsters fight for it, all 350,000 of us. You know, corporatists hate when working people join together to form unions. But for a century, major employers have waged a war against labor by forming corporate unions of their own. We need to call the Chamber of Commerce and the business roundtables what they are. They are unions for big business. And here's another fact. Against gigantic multinational corporation, an individual worker has zero power. It's only when Americans band together in democratic unions that we win real improvements on wages, benefits, and working conditions. Companies like Amazon are bigger than most national economies. Amazon is valued over $2 trillion. That makes it the 14th largest economy in the world. What is sickening is that Amazon has abandoned any national allegiance. Amazon's sole focus is on lining its own pockets. Remember, elites have no party, elites have no nation. Their loyalty is to the balance sheet and to the stock price at the expense of the American worker. In my office in Washington, D.C., I can see the United States Capitol from my window. I see well-intentioned people arrive in Washington and get eaten up by an unforgiving system. The responsibility to average Americans takes a back seat. The objective now becomes survival. Fundraiser after fundraiser, corporate consultants hedge every initiative. The Hill crawls with lifers, bouncing from government jobs to corporate jobs and back again. I think we can all agree D.C. is a pretty treacherous area. Most legislation is never meant to go anywhere, and it's all talk. And in America, talk isn't cheap. It's very expensive, and it comes at the cost of our own country. Working people know our system is broken. The elites are not laboring on behalf of workers. There is a political caste system that prevents citizens from accessing their representatives to hold them accountable. For a moment in time, working people in America were seen as essential. Sadly, it took a global pandemic for political and corporate elites to notice this fact. But ask yourself this question. Since the end of the pandemic, when was the last time you heard major news outlets regularly refer to workers as essential? You haven't. The men and women who provide goods and services, deliver packages, stock grocery shelves, care for patients, pick up your trash, and keep our communities safe are taken for granted. All the while, the stock market booms, housing prices hit record highs, and corporate salaries skyrocket. But the income of everyday Americans are shrinking in the face of inflation. At the gas pumps, at the grocery store, with the electrical bill, and with the car insurance. This has got to change. Never forget, American workers own this nation. We are not renters. We are not tenants. But the corporate elite treat us like squatters, and that is a crime. We've got to fix it. Now, this will shock you. This will shock you. To paraphrase Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, it's time for both sides of Congress to stand their butts up. We need trade policies that put American workers first. It needs to be easier for companies to remain in America. We need legal protections that make it safer for workers to get a contract. We must stop corporations from abandoning local communities to inflate their bottom line. We need meaningful bankruptcy reform. Today, corporate vultures buy up companies like Yellow Freight with the intent of driving them into bankruptcy and feasting on their remains. The courts leave workers begging for crumbs as third-tier creditors. Labor law must be reformed. Americans vote for a union but can never get a union contract. Companies fire workers who try to join unions and hide behind toothless laws that are meant to protect working people but are manipulated to benefit corporations. This is economic terrorism at its best. An individual cannot withstand such an assault. A fired worker cannot afford corporate delays, and these greedy employers know it. There are no consequences for the company, only the worker. We need corporate welfare reform. Under our current system, massive companies like Amazon, Uber, Lyft, and Walmart take zero responsibilities for the workers they employ. These companies offer no real health insurance, no retirement benefits, no paid leave, relying on underfunded public assistance. And who foots the bill? The individual taxpayer. The biggest recipients of welfare in this country are corporations, and this is real corruption. We must put workers first. What could be more important to the security of our nation than a long-term investment in the American worker? In 2021, Teamsters nationwide elected me to fight for them, and that's precisely what I'm doing. Something is wrong in this country, and we need to say it out loud. I will always speak for America and the American worker, both union and non-union. I challenge each and every one of you, and especially my friends on the Democratic side, to embrace cooperation, to truly collaborate, to achieve meaningful and productive change, to ensure we make this great nation in this world the bigger, faster, and strongest nation in the entire world. I love this country. The Teamsters love this country. Our 1.3 million members move America on the roads, in the ports, on the rail, and in the air. And at the end of the day, if the powers to be stop me from raising my voice on behalf of American workers, I will not have one single regret. I still carry my commercial driver's license. I still have my place on the union seniority list. You'll find me back in Boston driving a tractor-trailer, delivering equipment for Shaughnessy and Ahern, because I have the protection of a union contract that gives me the freedom to speak my mind and to fight like hell. God bless the greatest nation. Thank you very much.
Well, extraordinary remarks from Sean O'Brien, who is the general president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. This is the first time that a leader of such a storied union like this has addressed a Republican convention ever, and made some stunning remarks about working class people. And I want to bring in Major Garrett on this. Major.
First thing he said that really revved up the audience was that after the weekend event, Donald Trump is clearly one tough SOB. Huge applause line. But I think what will be recorded historically, Nora, is this is the most aggressive and certainly the longest anti-big business speech ever delivered at a Republican National Convention, which explains part of the populist politics of Donald Trump and how it has changed the Republican Party at the grassroots level and how it may change the Republican Party going forward with a running mate like J.D. Vance.
But he was bashing corporate profits.
Corporate profits, corporate greed,
and yet,
resistance to work rules, resistance to higher wages.
But Donald Trump wants to lower again the corporate tax rate.
From 21% to 20%.
His tax policies in 2017, this is a fact, benefited the wealthy more than it benefited working class Americans.
By percentage of wealth gained from those tax cuts, absolutely. But he also had aggressive trade policies. Robert Costa has talked about this many times, that those in the labor movement or those who are white blue-collar workers saw as more responsive to their consternation over decades of trade policies that they thought were harmful to their economic future.
This is going to be the heart of this debate for this presidential election, because people are voting with their paychecks, with their pocketbooks, I should say, because they feel like their paychecks are smaller and they feel like they're paying more for basic goods. We're going to talk more about this in just a moment. Ahead, more from CBS News coverage of the Republican National Convention.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has a glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
This is CBS.
Welcome back to CBS News coverage of day one of the Republican National Convention, where Donald Trump has made his first public appearance. You can see his right ear bandaged following that attempted assassination attempt, sitting there with his family after listening to the keynote address. I want to check in with Tony DeCopel, who is on the floor of this convention. Tony?
Hey, good evening, Nora. You know, I've been to Florida, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Colorado, Michigan. I was looking for a Teamster, any member of the union, from that keynote address from Sean O'Brien. Did not find one, which might say something, but I did find a union contractor here from Iowa. It's Gary Leffler. He works with a lot of union members, and you were seriously enjoying that speech. Tell us what you thought.
I thought the guy had really captured the moment. I mean, he hit all of the bullet points. He knew exactly what he was talking about. I just had a family reunion, and those guys are all union workers. And they said every one of them is voting for Trump. because they just said, hey, we have more month than money at the end of that time. And interest rates are just killing these union guys. And the economy, as it shrinks, has hurt more and more people. I would talk to one guy that built 150 homes in the Des Moines area. He's building, last year, when Trump was in president, he built 150 homes. This year, he's building 8. And that affects all the people that are providing material and appliances and everything else to those houses and to that economy. And in Iowa, there's a shortage of housing. But not only a shortage of housing, but a shortage of affordable housing. So that's a real crunch.
You know, Gary, when I first spoke with you, you said that speech hit it out of the park and they're never going to find the ball. But then when we went back up for analysis there in the booth at CBS, you know, there was a feeling that when you think about Republican national conventions, traditionally, this is the party of big business. And that might have been one of the most significant anti-big business speeches in the history of Republican conventions. Did you hear it that way?
I heard it as not necessarily from that angle. What I heard was, hey, let's take care of the American worker. You know, it's kind of like when the American worker does well, then everybody does well. That's good for families. It's good for communities. It's good for everything. And, you know, like even when you go into the school districts, which are, you know, they're primarily a union-type facility.
They sure are.
And they can't hire people because the minimum wage, they can get a job at McDonald's for $18 an hour, and the school can only hire and pay them $14 an hour.
Gary, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's a storyline. It's a storyline we'll keep following, Nora. Back to you.
Tony DeCopel with those great interviews from the floor. Thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear from many of the president's supporters who have come up their perspective about what's happening with the economy back at home. Let's bring in CBS News political contributor Terry Sullivan, as he was Senator Marco Rubio's presidential campaign manager in 2016. And Terry, what did you make of that remarks from the president of the Teamsters? We noted here a pretty anti-corporate speech talking about sticking up for the workers and certainly union workers in America.
Look, Nora, this is not your father's Republican Party convention. You mentioned 1996. I was at that 1996 convention. I think I think we had Lee Greenwood there as well. But to have not only a Teamsters leader, a union member, giving the keynote, but before that, a rapper and a reality TV star. This just shows that Donald Trump is able to expand the playing field and do this in a non-traditional way, to go out and get new groups, new segments, and not to just the traditional Republican groups and the blocks of voters, to go out and get to workers, to get to different groups of people, to really draw them into the Republican message. And it's different than it used to be. And it's a very aggressive approach. And when you're in a strong position like the Trump campaign is now, they're going to go and try to go into traditional Democrat territories and pick up votes.
And Joel Payne, Democratic strategist, is with us. And Joel, we have heard from Joe Biden's campaign, who says Donald Trump was the worst president for workers ever, saying that Trump's current policies would trigger a recession by mid-2025, eliminate more than 3 million jobs, and add $2,500 in taxes for working families, and inflict an inflation bomb, in part because of those tariffs that former President Trump has talked about imposing on foreign countries like China.
Yeah, Nora, you used the word extraordinary. I think I would use cognitive dissonance, not just with Mr. O'Brien's speech, but with the entire night. Very good rhetoric, very good words. Donald Trump did not govern in this way, and he's not talking about governing in this way. I think it's an effective way to show off what you hope that the Republican Party can project, but it does not match reality. What matches reality is that Donald Trump historically has not been someone who has been a fan of the worker. He's been a fan of big business. And I think you're going to hear President Biden and Democrats really lay that out in the coming weeks and months.
Joel Payne, thank you. Let's take a moment to listen to what's happening here inside this convention hall. The music. Donald Trump shaking hands with many of the delegates. You can see surrounded by a number of Secret Service agents. And I've covered presidents. I've been on the road with them. They always have a lot around them. He has more around him. Even Barack Obama, there were many threats against his life. He was surrounded. This is an enormous amount of agents. We'll be right back.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing or bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 Hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back, and this wraps up an extraordinary first day of the Republican National Convention. We all saw former President Trump for the first time since that attempted assassination attempt 48 hours ago. You can hear he was greeted by a roaring crowd, and his right ear bandaged after that bullet grazed the top of his ear. He has said in an interview with local reporters, "I could be dead." Well, tonight, day 1 of this convention, we'll continue to cover it here on CBS, and you'll see more tomorrow on CBS Mornings. Good night.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean?